Chapter 951. The star's domain was very complicated. Zhou Xuanji only understood it after listening to Jin Cheng for a few months. He cracked his neck and said, "Next, I will preach the Tao for the astral domain. Everyone can listen, including you." Preach the Tao? Jin Cheng was stunned. Just when he was about to speak, Zhou Xuanji spoke first. "Everyone in the star realm, listen up. I'm the Sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji. From today onwards, I'm the master of the star realm. As newcomers, I will preach the Tao to all of you. I hope that all of you will be enlightened." Zhou Xuanji's voice resounded throughout the star's domain, allowing all creatures in the world to hear it. Before anyone could react, he began to recite the ancestral voice. Jin Cheng originally had some doubts, but when he heard the ancestral voice, he was moved. What exquisite language! He was soon immersed in it. Outside the hall, Fiend Supremacy Scarlet Brilliance and Supremacy Night Moon were also meditating on the spot, quietly comprehending. The ancestral voice was enough to raise Zhou Xuanji's image in everyone's hearts. Time flew by. About 100 years passed. Zhou Xuanji stopped speaking the ancestral voice. All beings wanted to continue. Jin Cheng opened his eyes and looked at Zhou Xuanji with admiration. At this moment, he was completely convinced. He solemnly cupped his fists and bowed, saying, "Master, your cultivation is truly impressive." What language was that just now? Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "I can't say. You can go now, I have other arrangements." "Yes." Jin Cheng left with excitement in his heart. Just this ancestral voice alone was a great opportunity for the multi-star domain. He could see the light now. With Zhou Xuanji, the star range domain would grow stronger. The hall quietened down again. Zhou Xuanji raised his right index finger, and Xian Xianghua and Red Dust Sovereign appeared in the hall. The two girls were stunned and subconsciously looked around. "This place is?" Xian Xianghua asked curiously. She could feel that the aura here was very different. It was thick and warm. Zhou Xuanji replied with a smile, "Star's Field. There are over 100 courts here. Who wants to take it?" The two women widened their eyes when they heard this. More than 100 heavenly courts. How long had it been? The forces under him had already expanded to such an extent? "Even if we want to, we don't have the strength." Autarch Crimson Dust shook his head. It was already difficult enough for them to control the true Su Court realm. Just the thought of controlling the multi-star domain as well was enough to give her an enormous amount of pressure. Zhou Xuanji nodded and said with a smile, "That's true. So, you have to integrate into the multi-star domain first. I will let you take up positions first. I will send an outer soul clone to accompany you so that you won't be wronged." He was prepared to release the 3 realms in his soul and communicate with the other realms. In the following period of time, he would think of a way to integrate the star's domain. However, with his cultivation level, it was almost impossible for him to do so. If even the current incarnation of the Supreme of the 7 courts could not do it, how could he? In other words, he had to protect the myriad stars' domain, and it would be difficult for him to escape. In order to prevent his enemies from detecting him, he decided to leave his doppelganger behind and hide his true body in the absolute time realm. This way, he could avoid being tracked by his enemies. Of course, nothing was absolute. No matter what, he couldn't keep running. Just as Zhou Xuanji was making arrangements for the 2 women, the star domain was already in an uproar. All creatures were talking about the Sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji. The merit of the ancestral sound made it so that none of the living beings rejected him. On the contrary, they were very passionate about him. All the great sovereigns announced to the realms and the various star realms that from now on, Zhou Xuanji would be the master of the star's domain. This caused a huge uproar. Zhou Xuanji forcefully entered the history of the various worlds. In the star's domain, Zhou Xuanji also learned a lot about the endless universe. The endless universe was divided into 4 parts: East Endless, North Endless, South Endless, and West Endless. Each of the 4 directions had an undying overlord, and among them were the ancient geniuses. The Cardinal Heaven and Hunyuan Heaven had been resurrected and were fighting on their own. The Cardinal Heaven was fighting for the North Endless, which included the Myriad Domain Devil Lair and the Stars Domain. The Hunyuan Heaven was fighting in the South Endless, and its momentum was no weaker than the Cardinal Heaven. Among them, the ancient geniuses were the overlords of the West Endless. The Four Directions and the Endless Universe were boundless. Other than that, there were still many unknown territories that were constantly expanding. In the Endless Universe, there were many unimaginable existences. Especially those who survived from the ancient sovereign era. They were unimaginable gods. It was said that because of their existence, the Endless Universe could no longer be unified. Those ancient existences overturned the ancient sovereign era and did not want to repeat the same mistakes. The ancient geniuses were restrained by them and could not rule the Four Directions and Endless. After Zhou Xuanji learned about all this, he became even more interested in the Endless Universe. The Cardinal Heaven and Hunyuan Heaven had already begun to rise. As a Hongmeng Heaven, how could he bear the loneliness? He arranged for his out-of-soul clone to vigorously promote the communication between the various halls. The Superstar competition had also officially landed in the Stars Domain. This grand event soon attracted the interest of all living beings. Countless geniuses were eager to participate. In the Stars Palace, Jin Qing respectfully looked at Zhou Xuanji's out-of-soul clone and reported the development and changes of the Stars Domain. Now, he had long forgotten the humiliation from before. Instead, he was very excited. Before Zhou Xuanji's arrival, he only thought about how to live in peace and how to plunder the living beings that came and went. Now, the entire Stars Domain was full of vigor and flourishing. Even the great sovereigns were working hard to cultivate. He had not felt such positivity for a long time. Master, there's a domain nearby. It's much larger than our Stars Domain. Its master's cultivation has reached the great sovereign of the 9 halls. He's very domineering. Every once in a while, we must pay tribute to him. After we rejected the Cardinal Heaven's recruitment, there was no trouble because of him. Jin Qing changed the topic. His face turned ugly at the mention of the great sovereign of the 9 halls. There was fear, anger, and most of all, hatred. In order to protect the Stars Domain, he had received a lot of humiliation. Of course, these humiliation were not known to his subordinates. The two domains were far apart. The Stars Domain did not know of each other's existence. Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes and said, "Great sovereign of the 9 halls? In the Endless Universe, is this cultivation considered top-notch?" He had long felt that there was another realm above the great sovereign. The godly blank state was the best proof. Jin Qing said hesitantly, "It should be. Otherwise, how could that guy hold back so many powerful cultivators under the Cardinal Heaven?" Zhou Xuanji asked, "You mean the tribute time is coming soon?" Jin Qing nodded. His eyes were filled with anticipation. "What do you want me to do? Continue to pay tribute or overthrow him?" Zhou Xuanji asked with a faint smile. Jin Qing smiled awkwardly and said, "Of course, it's up to you to decide." Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, "Let's ignore them for now. We won't be enemies with them for now. Compared to them, the Cardinal Heaven is a greater threat. We must be vigilant." Jin Qing thought about it carefully and felt that it made sense. That domain happened to hold back the Cardinal Heaven. Send someone to check on the situation. If there's an opportunity, we will take advantage of it, Zhou Xuanji instructed. Jin Qing nodded. Just when he was about to leave, he suddenly froze. Chapter 952. Who? Come out. Jin Qing shouted in a deep voice as he scanned the entire hall. A burst of soft laughter came, and Zhou Xuanji heard it, and his expression became a little unnatural. Divine Star. Why is this guy here again? Shen Nianxing appeared by Zhou Xuanji's side out of thin air. She bent down and reached out to pick up a strand of Zhou Xuanji's hair. She said with a smile, "You are really amazing. You have become the domain lord of the stars." Jin Qing turned around and roared furiously, "How dare you! Although he spoke, he did not attack. Since the other party could appear beside Zhou Xuanji, he was definitely not someone he could deal with. Zhou Xuanji glanced at Shen Yanqing and said, "What? You want to catch me again?" Now, he was not afraid of Shen Yanqing. Shen Yanqing shook her head and said with a smile, "How can I be willing to capture you? I'm here to congratulate you and help you by the way." Zhou Xuanji did not believe it. There was definitely something fishy going on. "You are really arrogant. You need to rely on my strength to deal with a Cardinal Heaven expert." Shen Yanqing curled her lips and said. Her eyes rolled around, looking mischievous. She said meaningfully, "Zhou Xuanji, do you know how many Cardinal Heaven beings are more powerful than you? In all directions, how powerful are the great sovereigns of the Nine Court?" Zhou Xuanji did not reply but stared at her, waiting for her to continue. "The ruler of the court realm is just the beginning in the boundless universe. You're still far from it. In the future, I'll follow you." Shen Yanqing rolled her eyes at Zhou Xuanji before turning around and walking toward the train. She waved her sleeves and ordered, "Lad, arrange a place for me to stay. I want a secluded place with good scenery." Jin Cheng was stunned and looked at Zhou Xuanji instinctively. Zhou Xuanji nodded slightly and left. After the two disappeared, Zhou Xuanji rubbed his chin and fell into deep thought. If Shen Yanqing came to help him, it was estimated that she had another intention. But this was good as well. With her around, Zhou Xuanji's pressure would be greatly reduced. After the thought, Zhou Xuanji closed his eyes. His original body was in the absolute time realm, and it was only an extra soul doppelganger. After Shen Yanqing joined the star field, it did not cause too much of a stir, and all living beings did not know of her arrival. Zhou Xuanji would occasionally send some elite disciples of the Emperor Sword Divine Range to study in the star's realm, including his children and grandchildren. Zhou Tianyuan had already entered the myriad stars' domain's strongest sacred ground, and Jin Cheng had also become one of his teachers. This arrangement made Jin Cheng very excited. As long as he took good care of Zhou Tianyuan, he could become Zhou Xuanji's trusted aide. If one day, Zhou Tianyuan took over Zhou Xuanji's position, wouldn't he be able to achieve meteoric success as well? Thinking of this possibility, Jin Cheng worked even harder, wholeheartedly cultivating Zhou Tianyuan. Absolute Time Realm. Jiang Shui snuggled in Zhou Xuanji's arms and enjoyed the rare moment of solitude. The astral domain is so big. It's hard to manage. Zhou Xuanji had been nurturing them, including the Emperor Sword Divine Range. But his pace was too fast. Even if they tried their best, they could hardly keep up with him. Even though Xian Xianghua was connected to Zhou Xuanji's exterminating divine eyes, she could not follow him closely. Zhou Xuanji comforted, "Don't you have me? Take your time." He couldn't stop. He wanted to rush even faster. Jiang Shui looked up at him and smiled charmingly. "Do you want another son?" Zhou Tanhua was very promising. He was already independent. Zhou Shaoxian, on the other hand, was a little jumpy and impatient. She needed more training. So, she suddenly wanted to give birth to another child for Zhou Xuanji to share his burden. Zhou Xuanji hooked her nose and said with a smile, "Why have so many children? Be careful of internal strife in the future." Now, he only had 2 children. He would not neglect any of them. But if he had too many children, there would always be neglect. Jiang Shui rolled her eyes at him and said, "My children won't kill each other." Zhou Xuanji smiled and hugged her even tighter. His eyes suddenly turned sharp. After relaxing for so long, it was time to do something serious. On the Star River stairs, Zhou Xuanji walked slowly. Jin Cheng and Demon Sovereign Qiyu followed behind him. "Master, you must be careful of the Million Dragon Great Technique of the Dragon Follower Domain. That formation is even more powerful than our Astral Multitude formation," Jin Cheng reminded. He had challenged the Dragon Follower Domain before but failed. Demon Sovereign Qiyu asked curiously, "Is the Dragon Follower Domain so powerful that Cardinal Heaven cannot devour them? Or is it that Cardinal Heaven is not as invincible as I thought?" Jin Cheng smiled and said, although cardinal heaven has revived, it is still far from the pinnacle. Those who dominate a region are prideful and arrogant. Why would they submit to him? Now, cardinal heaven can only be considered a top-notch leader below the endless overlords. It was not the post-ancient sovereign three heavens after all. Countless living beings admired the legends of their predecessors, and many wanted to surpass them. According to what you said, the dragon follower domain has just repelled the cardinal heaven's minions and is now collecting tributes from the surrounding domains to recuperate. My goal is not to defeat the dragon follower domain but to intimidate them. Cardinal heaven will surely make a comeback, so the dragon follower domain must reconsider whether to offend us again, Zhou Xuanji said with a soft smile as he looked ahead. If they are smart, they might ally with us to fight against cardinal heaven. Jin Sheng and demon sovereign Qiyu nodded. This was the best situation. Cardinal heaven was also their enemy. More accurately, they were the enemy of the entire northern endless realm. No one willingly submitted. Moreover, what the cardinal heaven wanted wasn't submission, but destruction and revenge. The Star River staircase was very long. It was specially built by the dragon follower domain to make it easier to find the star's domain. Not only here, but there were also Star River staircases between the dragon follower domain and other domains. The silhouette of the dragon follower domain could already be seen ahead. From a distance, it looked like a place where a group of dragons resided. Countless dragon silhouettes coiled around a gigantic ball of light. The boundless vitality could not be concealed at all. Zhou Xuanji squinted his eyes in amazement. There were many living beings in the dragon follower domain, and they were generally more powerful than the star's domain. No wonder it could reign supreme over the eight directions domain. There was an aura that was very prominent in the dragon follower domain. Even from such a distance, Zhou Xuanji was shocked. Very powerful. 9 halls great sovereigns indeed. Zhou Xuanji felt a little excited suddenly. He wanted to test the difference between him and the 9 halls great sovereigns. Without godly blankness, he would not be able to defeat the 9 halls great sovereigns. This was why he was so excited. So powerful. Has he already discovered us? Demon Sovereign Qiyu asked anxiously. The further they went, the greater the pressure they felt. Jin Qing did not reply. He was nervous too. Zhou Xuanji suddenly disappeared in front of them, which stunned them. On the other side, Zhou Xuanji appeared above the dragon follower domain. He looked down at the vast dragon silhouettes, and his purple eyes flashed with fervor. He raised his right hand with the Holy Ghost cursed sword and was about to slash down. You want to attack the moment you come? You are too forceful. A sonorous and furious voice came, as though the sun was exploding. Zhou Xuanji could clearly sense that the surrounding space was heating up rapidly. Chapter 953. Zhou Xuanji glanced over and saw the shadow of a dragon soaring into the sky. A ball of black flames burned on the dragon's head. A god stood within the black flames. He wore a Qilin red leaf armor and was muscular. He had a head full of wild black hair, and his eyes were so big that they looked like they were about to pop out of their sockets. He held 2 gigantic spiked hammers in his hands, which looked extremely savage. He looked at Zhou Xuanji furiously. His murderous intent almost materialized into the black flames around him, burning fiercely. Zhou Xuanji looked down at him and said with a smile, "Rumor has it that there are great sovereigns of the 9 halls in the dragon follower domain. I'm here to learn from you." After that, he slashed down with his sword. 9 sword souls appeared out of nowhere. Some looked savage while others looked mighty. All of them turned into sword shadows that swept toward the red-armored god in a flash. The red-armored god swung his hammers to block the 9 sword souls. In the next second, his expression changed drastically. After the sword souls exploded, the curse's power seeped out and invaded his body. He immediately expelled the curse's power, but this power was very tricky, and he could not expel it by force. In that instant, he used his sovereign's divine power to suppress the curse's power before charging toward Zhou Xuanji. Once the battle began, he became hysterical and did not care about anything else. Boom! Zhou Xuanji felt his vision blur, and he was sent flying backward. But after flying a few thousand meters, Zhou Xuanji stopped. The red-armored god opened his eyes wide. He did not expect Zhou Xuanji's body to be so powerful. Even he felt pain from that collision. This guy must be eliminated. The red-armored god's eyes turned savage as he charged toward Zhou Xuanji again. This time, Zhou Xuanji used his full power. Under the sword fusion technique, his aura reached its peak. Facing the red-armored god, he charged toward him head-on. He slashed with his full power, and the Holy Ghost cursed sword landed on the two hammers. The berserk power numbed the red-armored god's arms. He cried out in his heart, "What kind of power is this?" It was his first time encountering someone with such a horrifying physical strength. Most importantly, the curse's power was still wreaking havoc in his body, ravaging him. Zhou Xuanji pursued. He did not pursue speed but power. Even so, he was still very fast. Without any divine abilities and with just the sword in his hand, Zhou Xuanji completely suppressed the red-armored god and caught him off guard. The surrounding stars were crushed by the shockwaves caused by the battle, and the dragon's shadow below wantonly twisted. Dragon's rampage. Far away, Jin Cheng and Qi were speechless when they saw that. Too strong. From their point of view, the universe space distorted violently, causing Long Tsong's domain to look hazy like a dream. Zhou Xuanji continuously attacked the red-armored deity, and soon, the red-armored deity's body was covered with blood. His body could be destroyed at any moment. His strength is too strong. I can't block it. No. You can't do this. The crimson-armored deity thought with gritted teeth as he defended against Zhou Xuanji's legendary swords. Facing Zhou Xuanji's attacks, he could not use any divine abilities, and the curse power was still in effect. Every time the sword and hammer collided, the curse power in his body would become stronger. Right now, he would rather die than live. You're no match for me. Where's your master? Why hasn't he come out? Zhou Xuanji laughed condescendingly. He had already held back, or else he could have killed his opponent. The Supreme of the Nine Halls had yet to make a move, which made him feel a little strange. Was she not here, or was she looking down on him? How could I lose to you? The crimson-armored deity roared furiously. He shook his arms, and his body exploded. He took out his soul and dodged the Holy Ghost cursed sword. Zhou Xuanji turned around and activated Universal Attraction. At the same time, he activated the Soul Kunlun sword. The crimson-armored deity's soul was sucked away in an instant, and he could no longer move forward. You! He turned around and cried out in fear. Not only could his soul not escape, but his sovereign's divine energy was also being sucked away. Zhou Xuanji was absorbing his divine energy. Since no one can save you, then die, Zhou Xuanji said with a mocking smile. The Soul Kunlun sword in his left hand sucked away the crimson-armored deity's soul while he raised the Holy Ghost cursed sword in his right hand, preparing to deal a fatal blow. The crimson-armored deity panicked completely, and despair filled his face. At this critical moment, a silhouette appeared in front of Zhou Xuanji and kicked him in the chest. Boom! Zhou Xuanji was sent flying backward like an arrow, crashing through numerous dragon shadows. He looked up, and as he flew backward at high speed, he saw the other party's face. This person wore a long black and white robe and looked like a Taoist. His face was thin and resolute, and his eyes were cold. He was looking down at Zhou Xuanji with disdain, as though he was looking at an ordinary person. The Lord of the Dragon Follower Domain, Daozang Heart. His original form was a dragon, but no one knew what race he was. He was very powerful. In Jin Cheng's words, he had never been defeated before. Zhou Xuanji forcefully stabilized his body. He stomped on the ground with his right foot and charged toward Daozang Heart. Strands of blue wind coiled around Daozang Heart's body. The great sovereign of the five courts dares to fight against me, he said with a mocking smile. He raised his right hand and brought it before his eyes. His fingers were burning with blue flames. He waved lightly, and the blue flames fell down and transformed into a divine army that charged toward Zhou Xuanji with a roar. Zhou Xuanji sensed that the dark universe above him suddenly turned blue. He looked again and saw countless blue divine weapons appearing. Each of them was holding a different weapon, and they were unstoppable, as though the sky was collapsing. Kill! Billions of battle cries gathered together and were deafening. Even Zhou Xuanji was shocked, but he quickly came back to his senses. Good timing. Zhou Xuanji laughed. He transformed into a 5-clawed golden dragon and soared up. Boom! The golden dragon broke through the blue divine army and charged toward Daozang Heart without any hesitation. However, before he could break through the blue divine army, he was stopped. The divine army at the last level was not any weaker than him. What divine ability is this? Zhou Xuanji frowned. There were at least 1,000,000 divine weapons in this row, and each of them was as powerful as him? What kind of freakish divine ability was this? Daozang Heart stored the red-armored deity's soul in his palm and said coldly, "Trash, you are one stage higher than him, but you still can't defeat him." The red-armored deity was ashamed. Just when he wanted to explain, Daozang Heart's left hand grabbed him and stored him in his sleeve. Boom! 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 The blue divine army below was pierced through by thousands of giant golden swords. The thousand-hand sword Buddha stood up, and Zhou Xuanji stood on its head and stared at Daozang Heart. "I know such a divine ability too." Zhou Xuanji snorted coldly. Numerous silver duplicates flew out from his body and surrounded the thousand-hand sword Buddha's head. 1,000,000. Greatly avatars. He led the 1,000,000 greatly avatars and charged toward Daozang Heart like a meteor shower. Almost in an instant, he and his greatly clones were above Daozang's heart, surrounding it from all directions. Daozang Heart looked up without any change in his expression. There was even a hint of mockery in his eyes. So weak. He waved his right hand, and the blue flames on his fingers turned into streams of light. All the greatly avatars were destroyed instantly. Zhou Xuanji's expression changed suddenly, and he vomited a mouthful of blood. Before he could react, Daozang Heart appeared behind him and pressed down on his shoulder. Chapter 954. Daozang Xian's fingers were still burning with flames, and they quickly burned Zhou Xuanji's shoulder. His eyes were cold as he squinted at Zhou Xuanji and said, "You are the new master of the star domain, right? You overestimate yourself. You dare to provoke the dragon follower domain with your little power." He squeezed his right hand hard. Boom! Zhou Xuanji exploded immediately, turning into countless sparks and scattering. Daozang Xian suddenly narrowed his eyes. Just as he was about to turn around, Zhou Xuanji's holy ghost curse sword pierced through his throat. The curse power madly invaded his bones and tendons. He did not panic. Instead, he unleashed his sovereign's divine power and forced Zhou Xuanji back. At the same time, he sealed his throat with blue flames. He turned to look at Zhou Xuanji and asked, "What divine ability was that?" Zhou Xuanji had suddenly disappeared, and even his divine sense could not detect him, making him feel quite shocked. A divine ability that Grand Supremes can't comprehend. Zhou Xuanji said with a smile before he disappeared again. Daozang rolled his eyes and crossed his arms in front of his chest. His left hand ignited with a blue flame. He waved his arms fiercely, and violent blue flames rushed in all directions, burning space and annihilating natural laws. However, this domineering blue flame did not force Zhou Xuanji out. Zhou Xuanji was moving swiftly around the Daoist treasury's heart. This was a divine ability that he had only recently comprehended. It was very similar to the godless state, but it was a low-level version of the godless state. The difference in speed was like heaven and earth, but it was still enough to deal with a great supreme. He called it God speed. In godly supreme speed, he could peek into the real world and stop at any time to give the enemy a surprise attack. Zhou Xuanji suddenly exited godly supreme speed and appeared above Daozang Xian's head, slashing down with his sword. Daozang Xian's head was hit by the Holy Ghost's cursed sword, and his hair became messy. However, his head was not split open. His expression was still grave and stern. He grabbed Zhou Xuanji's wrist and pulled it down. Zhou Xuanji's expression changed slightly. He immediately tilted his head, and the exterminating divine light shot out from his eyes and shined on Daozong Xian. Daozong's heart instantly froze, unable to move. Zhou Xuanji leaped away and raised his right hand. Gathering the sovereign's divine power, he slashed down. Great Enlightenment God slash. The sword qi lit up the universe, and Daozong's heart was drowned by this majestic sword qi. The space around him collapsed. Zhou Xuanji did not stop but continued to use other divine abilities of the way of the sword. Countless sword qi and sword light shot toward Daozong's heart from different directions. Explosions sounded one after another, and the dragons below roared and twisted. The dragon follower domain seemed like it would be destroyed at any moment. Fiend Venerable Qi Yu and Jin Cheng watched from afar, their hearts pounding. Master is actually suppressing the heart of the Tao mysteries. Jin Cheng said with a face full of admiration. He was so excited that his entire body was trembling. He was well aware of how terrifying the heart of Daozong was. Back then, when he faced Daozong Xian, he was utterly defeated. In that battle, Daozong Xian had deeply humiliated him, making the realm of stars become the slave of the realm of dragon follower. Now that Daozong Xian was at a disadvantage, how could he not be excited? Demon Sovereign Qiyu was fine. He had already built up his confidence in Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji continued to unleash divine abilities, but he felt that something was off. The aura of Daozong Xian remained in the midst of the explosion. It did not decrease nor increase, nor did it move. It was terrifyingly calm. Could it be? Zhou Xuanji's pupils dilated, and he had a guess in his heart. He immediately stopped. After the explosion subsided, the universe was in chaos. Spacetime cracks were everywhere, swaying like glowing worms. Come out, Zhou Xuanji said softly. Just when he spoke, strands of blue flames appeared on the tip of the Holy Ghost cursed sword and quickly formed into Daozong Xian's figure. Daozong Xian stood before Zhou Xuanji calmly and said, "Your divine ability is not bad. It gives off a feeling of godly stupor. Seems like your background is not simple." Godly stupor. This guy knew about it. It's a pity that it's not the true godly stupor. If you could learn it, you would be invincible. Even I would not be a match for you, Daozong Xian said seriously as he stared at Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji asked with narrowed eyes, "Then what was the divine ability you used just now?" He could tell that Daozong Xian was intimidated by godly stupor's speed and was asking for peace. "My innate divine ability, Hidden Heart Sacred Flame. As long as the sacred flame is not extinguished, I will not be extinguished. Wherever there is a sacred flame, I can appear there. And the sacred flame can be hidden in my heart, whether it's me or my enemies," Daozong Xian replied with a smile. His honesty further verified Zhou Xuanji's guess. Zhou Xuanji sighed in amazement. What an amazing divine ability. Compared to godly stupor, the potential of the Hidden Heart Sacred Flame is equally great. This was from the bottom of his heart. With the Hidden Heart Sacred Flame, Daozong Xian could also be invincible. No wonder this guy could resist the pressure of a cardinal heaven. From today onwards, the All-Star domain and Longsong domain will be on equal footing. You and I will work together to resist cardinal heaven. What do you think? Daozong Xian asked. His eyes were fixed on Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "Sure. But if there's an opportunity, you and I will continue to spar." It's not easy to find great sovereigns of the 9 halls. Battling with Daozong Xian was thrilling, and he could learn many things. Okay. If so, let's enter the Longsong domain as a guest, Daozong Xian said with a smile as he pointed downward. Zhou Xuanji had no objections and entered the Longsong domain with Daozong Xian. He was not afraid of Daozong Xian's tricks. Although it was their first time fighting, he was sure of Daozong Xian's temperament. This person was a proud person. If he had evil intentions, he would definitely continue fighting. It was not Zhou Xuanji's first time meeting someone like this. Seeing Zhou Xuanji and Daozong Xian fly into the Longsong domain, Demon Sovereign Qiyu grew anxious. He looked at Jin Cheng and asked, "Should we follow them?" Jin Cheng frowned and said, "No need. We will only be a burden to him. Let's wait and see." Since Daozong Xian said those words, it should be true. After all, there are many powerhouses from other domains in the Longsong domain. How can we convince the others if we go back on our words? Although no one flew out from the Longsong domain, they believed that many powerful cultivators were hiding inside to watch the battle. The commotion of this battle was so great that anyone with a little bit of cultivation would be able to sense it. The two of them waited where they were. About 3 days passed. Zhou Xuanji appeared before them and said with a smile, "Let's go. It's time to go back." With that, he took the lead and walked in the direction of the multi-star domain. "Master, how's the situation?" Jin Cheng caught up with him and asked curiously. Seeing Zhou Xuanji smile, their hearts itched as though they were being scratched by a cat. Zhou Xuanji replied, "We formed an alliance to advance and retreat together. We do not need to pay tribute to them. Moreover, the Longsong domain will provide us with resources to help the All-Star domain grow stronger." Having heard that, Jin Cheng and Demon Sovereign Qiyu opened their eyes wide. Daozong Xian was so easy to talk to. Especially Jin Cheng, who was filled with suspicion. Could it be Daozong Xian's scheme? Chapter 955. Since he is so polite, could it be that Master has already defeated him? Demon Sovereign Qiyu asked curiously. There was no doubt that the heart of Dao scripture was powerful. When the heart of Daozong suddenly emerged from the Holy Ghost cursed sword, he was scared out of his wits. This kind of divine ability was truly mysterious and made people tremble in fear. Both he and Jin Cheng heard what Daozong Xian said. A divine ability that could hide in one's heart could be said to be impossible to guard against. "No, I can't defeat him right now. Of course, he can't defeat me either. This is why we can form an alliance," Zhou Xuanji said with a smile as he squinted his eyes. He still needed to continue developing the godless state. It would be perfect if he could use the godly emptiness state in battle. Right now, he couldn't do it. He had to increase his cultivation. Daozong Xian is indeed powerful, but Master is even more powerful. You are only a supreme martial artist of the 5 courts, but he is a supreme martial artist of the 9 courts. Qiyu Demon Venerable sucked up to Meng Chao in a timely manner. When he heard this, he came back to his senses. That's right. Perhaps that was why Daozong Xian had compromised. An existence like Zhou Xuanji should not exist. He was enough to topple any powerhouse's understanding. Since he could not kill Zhou Xuanji, he might as well rope him in and forge a good relationship with him. Now that he understood this point, he felt at ease. His mood improved, and he began to imagine the future. With the help of the Draconic domain, the multi-star domain would definitely become stronger and stronger. Meanwhile, Daozong Xian was sitting alone in the splendid hall, leaning back on a chair and staring at the ceiling in silence. He muttered to himself, "Zhou Xuanji, just who are you?" Ethereal state. He had seen that state before, and it was an indescribably powerful one. He never imagined that such a state would appear on a grand sovereign. Now, he was filled with interest towards Zhou Xuanji. He was looking forward to Zhou Xuanji's background. After thinking for a long time, he took out a jade bead from his sleeve and crushed it. The powder drifted into the air, sparkling with specks of starlight. He looked at the powder and said softly, "Senior Zhu Kong, I need support." The powder instantly disappeared, no longer existing. After returning to the stars field, Zhou Xuanji observed the cultivation of Zhou Tianyuan and the others before entering absolute time to cultivate. According to what Daozong had said, it would take some time before the minions of the Cardinal Heaven experts made a comeback. It was said that the Cardinal Heaven experts had gathered all their subordinates for an unknown reason. However, there was one thing that was clear. The northern limitless realm would be even more difficult in the future. Once a cardinal heaven expert recovered to his peak, it would be a catastrophe for the North and even the entire endless universe. Although Daozong Xian was ambitious, he knew that survival was the most important thing. As for his ambitions, he would have to wait until he survived this disaster. While Zhou Xuanji was cultivating, his fame began to spread throughout the northern boundless continent. Becoming the disciple of the Rainbow Qin Sage. Dominate the stars' domain. The Great War Dao hid the heart and was undefeated. These things were enough to make Zhou Xuanji famous in the north. One must know that Daozong Xian was a formidable character in the northern limitless territory, and Hong Qin Sage was a senior. More and more living beings came to the All-Stars domain. Now, the All-Stars domain was no longer sealed and welcomed other living beings as guests. Zhou Xuanji wanted to turn the All-Stars domain into a central domain like the Thunder Alliance and Yen Alliance. He wanted to exchange resources and treat it as a cultivation sanctuary. This kind of alliance could attract living beings from all kinds of backgrounds and build up connections. Only then would it be able to survive. With Zhou Xuanji's help, Daoya Old Man and Xian Daoya discussed development strategies with Jincheng. Although their cultivation wasn't good, with Zhou Xuanji's backing, no one dared to offend them, including Jincheng. The Kunlun Origin Court, Zhensu Court Realm, and Zhan Lanting Realm were also growing. Every day, a steady stream of resources would be poured into the three realms. In Zhou Xuanji's heart, the three realms were the most important. As for the All-Stars domain, it couldn't be taken away. It could be developed but not as the top priority. Life returned to normal. Zhou Xuanji cultivated every day and occasionally came out to preach the Tao to the living beings under him. His ancestral voice could inspire all living beings. Preaching the Tao again and again made him gradually deified in the hearts of all living beings in the All-Stars domain. The magic of the ancestral voice also attracted more and more living beings to come and watch. Zhou Xuanji preached the Tao every 100 years to attract living beings and improve the status of the All-Stars domain. He was also worried that the ancestral voice would attract unnecessary trouble. But he had the spirit void state. What was there to be afraid of? Moreover, the ancestral voice couldn't be learned. This was what Shen Nianqing told him. Shen Nianqing also supported him to do so. In this way, she could also listen to the Tao. She was naturally happy. This day, Zhou Xuanji returned to the All-Stars Palace. Just as he was about to take a seat, Shen Nianqing barged in. Behind her, Sovereign Hongqian followed closely. "Brat, can you control her? If she pesters me again, I will kill her," Shen Nianqing said, gnashing her teeth. Sovereign Hongqian, who was behind her, stared at her expressionlessly. Zhou Xuanji sighed and said, "Can't you tell me where her sister is?" Shen Nianqing crossed her arms in front of her chest and snorted, "Dead. I ate her. How many times do I ask? It's still the same answer." Sovereign Hongqian frowned. He took a step forward and said, "I don't believe it. I can feel that she is still alive." Shen Nianqing's face was full of impatience. She angrily said, "Do you really think I don't dare to do anything to you?" She took a step and came before Sovereign Hongqian, placing her right palm on her forehead. "Okay, you go down first." "I will talk to her," Zhou Xuanji said, waving his hand. Zhou Xuanji waved his hand, signaling Shen Nianqing to leave first. Shen Nianqing could only wave her sleeves and leave. Sovereign Hongqian walked up to Zhou Xuanji and said, "She is Nianqing, right?" She was so entangled, but Shen Nianqing didn't hurt her, which made her more convinced. "It should be, but she's not the same as before. Don't bother her anymore, it's useless. Spend more time on cultivation, and when you're stronger than her, won't you be able to answer your questions?" Zhou Xuanji said as he nodded. He didn't know why Shen Nianqing wanted to deny her identity, but it didn't matter. The past is the past. Zhou Xuanji would figure it all out sooner or later. He hoped that mortal sovereign could remain calm. Supreme Crimson Dust nodded and said, "I recently came across a fortuitous encounter and want to give it a try." What do you think? After saying that, she flipped open her right palm. It was a piece of wood the size of a fingernail. It was dark green and had a strange character engraved on it. It was hard to read. There's a map hidden inside. I felt the same aura as the star pincher. I just wanted to confirm it again. I want to go to that place now. Mortal Sovereign said as he handed the dark green wood piece to Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji took the dark green wood piece and sent his divine will into it. Immediately afterward, a vast starry sky map appeared in his mind, and there was an extremely prominent red dot in the center that attracted his divine consciousness. This aura, Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes. He found that the aura in the map was very similar to that of the fated Fate Pearl. Is there any connection between the two? He immediately became interested and began to study the starry sky map. Chapter 956. Supreme Crimson Dust waited quietly, a look of anticipation in her eyes. It would be great if they could find the true whereabouts of Shen Nianxing from this star map. After a long while, Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes and exclaimed, "What an exquisite map! If it's true, there is indeed a great opportunity in that place." In the center of the map, in addition to the aura of the fated pearl, there was also the aura of Shen Nianxing when she was in the passage between the two worlds. Zhou Xuanji was also very interested in that place. "Where did you get this piece of wood?" Zhou Xuanji asked curiously, staring at Sovereign Red Dust. Sovereign Red Dust replied, "It was near the star's domain. I came across it by chance when I was traveling." By chance? Zhou Xuanji fell into deep thought. After a long while, he finally said, "Okay, let's go." He couldn't bear to look at Sovereign Red Dust's eyes. He could also learn about the origin of the fated pearl. "Remember, listen to me. Don't act recklessly," Zhou Xuanji exhorted. He was afraid that Sovereign Red Dust would lose control. Sovereign Red Dust rolled his eyes and said, "I am indeed persistent in looking for her, but I haven't lost my mind to the point of losing my mind." Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, "Let's go now." Anyway, he had nothing to do recently. The star's domain was developing steadily. The draconic domain was no longer a threat to the star's domain. He had time to go out. If he waited for a while longer, he wouldn't have the time to leave when the Supremes came. Zhou Xuanji left with Sovereign Red Dust, and the two disappeared from the star's palace. In the space-time tunnel, Zhou Xuanji looked at the star map in front of him, lost in thought. Sovereign Red Dust stood beside him, also paying attention to the star map. "Don't you feel that these stars look like a human figure when they gather together?" Zhou Xuanji asked. This star map was very magical. The arrangement of the stars inside was constantly changing. Zhou Xuanji only needed to fly toward the red dot in the center of the map to find his destination. When his divine sense entered the dark green wood piece, he understood how to use the star map. The map had a spirit and would guide the explorer. "Yes, it's ever-changing. It's hard to determine who it is," Sovereign Red Dust nodded. Autark Crimson Dust nodded, a look of curiosity on her face. Zhou Xuanji took out the Lesser Supreme Sword and showed it to Little Sovereign. Little Sovereign looked at it for a while and said in surprise, "Interesting. This map is so mysterious that it actually contains the truth of the universe. The aura inside is ever-changing. Where exactly is that place?" Zhou Xuanji curled his lip and said, "So you don't know? All these empty things. I'm guessing this is the legendary land of miracles, the origin of all worlds." Little Sovereign glared at Zhou Xuanji and coldly snorted. Zhou Xuanji signaled him with his eyes to continue. As we all know, the starting point of the endless universe is the Kunlun Origin Court. When our ancestors left the Kunlun Origin Court, they used some kind of divine ability to reach the void. They opened different realms from the void and gradually connected them together. The starting point of the endless universe is the land of miracles, the origin of the myriad worlds. Little Sovereign narrated the legend with a proud look on his face. As if to say, "Don't underestimate me." Autark Crimson Dust asked in puzzlement, do you think the passageway between the two realms can lead directly to those miraculous lands? Little Sovereign understood what she meant. He pondered and said, well, it's also possible. Your sister might have directly traveled to this miraculous place. Hearing this, Autarch Crimson Dust became even more expectant. Zhou Xuanji was wondering if there was more than one fated pearl. The fated pearl was born when the Kunlun origin court was established. Could it be that every origin of the myriad worlds has a fated pearl? Otherwise, how can I explain the aura of the fated pearl there? Autarch Crimson Dust continued to ask about the origin of the myriad worlds. Little Sovereign also became interested and told him everything he knew. Zhou Xuanji flew very fast. In less than 2 days, they arrived at their destination. This place was filled with colorful light and majestic mist. There wasn't a single star in sight. Zhou Xuanji flew on his sword with Little Sovereign hovering behind him and Autarch Crimson Dust beside him. The three of them flew forward while observing their surroundings. The red dot is here, but how do we get in? Zhou Xuanji asked with a frown. He spread his divine will but he couldn't find the entry point. Little Sovereign also furrowed his brow. Did I guess wrong? This isn't the origin of the myriad worlds? Autarch Crimson Dust suddenly said, I can feel a trace of red dust chi. It's right in front. After speaking, she took the lead and flew forward, landing in front of a red glow. Zhou Xuanji came behind her and stabbed the red glow with the lesser supreme sword. The blade pierced into the red glow. In an instant, a powerful suction wrapped around the two of them. Zhou Xuanji didn't resist. The next second, the two of them landed in the snow. The sky was full of snow. The sky and the earth were the same color. It was vast and empty. There was a towering mountain in front of them. Apart from that, they couldn't see any other mountains. Little Sovereign's soul flew out. He frowned and said, be careful, I feel something is wrong. Zhou Xuanji took out the Kunlun sword and the Holy Ghost cursed sword, ready to fight at any time. He could already feel a faint murderous aura. Autarch Crimson Dust raised her hand and pointed at the giant mountain in front of them. She said, the red dust chi comes from there. There is a huge amount of red dust chi on the top of the mountain, along with other auras. Her tone was a little excited. She had already captured Shen Nianqing's aura but she didn't act impulsively. Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, follow me. He stepped forward and flew towards the giant mountain. Autarch Crimson Dust followed closely behind. The closer they got to the giant mountain, the heavier the murderous aura became. They flew for about 10 miles. Stop. Don't go there. You will die. A voice suddenly came. Zhou Xuanji and the other two turned around. They saw a young man in a straw raincoat riding an ox. It was a green ox with a shoulder height of 6 feet. It was very burly, making the young man look like a dwarf. Little Sovereign raised his brow and asked, Kid, you live here? The young man in the straw raincoat nodded and replied, I was born here. I have seen many people come here to seek opportunities. No one who entered that mountain came back. His skin was slightly dark and his eyes were bright like 2 pearls. Oh. What about your parents? Little Sovereign asked. I don't have parents. I was born from a rock, the young man in the straw raincoat replied seriously. Zhou Xuanji and the other two didn't laugh. Their eyes were all focused on the green ox under him. This green ox had the cultivation of the 5 courts' great sovereign. Is there anyone else in this world besides you? Zhou Xuanji asked. The young man in the straw raincoat shook his head. He then looked at Autarch Crimson Dust and frowned, saying, My aunt is also here. She looks like you. Hearing this, Autarch Crimson Dust immediately became excited. It's definitely Shen Nianqing. Can you take us to see her? Autarch Crimson Dust asked, holding back his surprise. The young man in the straw raincoat nodded and turned around, leading the ox. Zhou Xuanji and the other two immediately followed. There's something wrong with this kid. He's a puppet, Little Sovereign transmitted his voice to Zhou Xuanji. Chapter 957. I know that the green bull is controlling him. Let's observe the situation first, Zhou Xuanji replied. Zhou Xuanji replied telepathically as he looked at the green bull. This green bull looked very simple and honest. It was no different from the green bulls in the mortal world. But it gave Zhou Xuanji a creepy feeling. Sovereign Hongchen wasn't blind either. Her eyes also fell on the green bull from time to time. The young man in the raincoat advanced toward the east of the giant mountain in silence. After half an hour, they landed in a basin that was still covered with snow. Below them was a city of ice and snow. It covered an area of dozens of miles. In this snow-covered world, it looked very small. After entering the city, Zhou Xuanji and the other two saw a terrifying scene. Ice sculptures were everywhere on the streets. All kinds of creatures were frozen in ice. Every creature had a look of horror and despair on their faces. At first glance, it was enough to make one's scalp tingle. Little guy, are these people here to seek opportunities? Little Sovereign asked. His eyes were a little sharp, but he quickly restrained himself and put on a kind smile. The young man in the raincoat replied without looking back, yes, this city has existed for a long time. It existed long before I was born. It has always been frozen. Don't touch anything around it. You will be frozen as soon as you touch it. Zhou Xuanji felt the cold energy here, but he didn't care much. The cold energy here was not as good as the cold energy he had absorbed before. Supremacy Crimson Dust asked, what is the background of that aunt of yours? Is she also here to seek opportunities? The young man in the raincoat replied without looking back, and is my aunt. She is the god who guards this place. God. Zhou Xuanji and the other two couldn't help but ponder over this sentence. Could it be that Shen Yanqing is trapped here and can't leave? Soon, they came to an ice and snow altar. A girl in a coarse dress was sitting on the altar. It was Shen Yanqing. She still looked the same as when she was in Anti-Kunlun. Sovereign Hongchen immediately became excited. She didn't panic but cautiously asked, Nianqing? Hearing this, Shen Yanqing slowly opened her eyes. Her eyes were so clear, but there was a hint of worry between her brows. Everyone, long time no see, she greeted. Her voice was a little hoarse as if she had experienced the vicissitudes of life. Sovereign Hongchen's heart trembled when she heard this. At this moment, endless regret, self-blame, unwillingness, and heartache filled her heart. Zhou Xuanji asked directly, someone is walking outside in your appearance. Do you know who she is? He felt strange in his heart. This Shen Yanqing seems to be real. Which Shen Yanqing is the real one? She is me, just another me. Shen Yanqing replied. She slowly stood up, and 2 chains fell down along the bottom of her skirt. Nianqing, Sovereign frowned and asked, Xuanqing. She frowned. Autarch Crimson Dust frowned. Who trapped you here? She took a step forward and wanted to help Shen Yanqing get out of trouble. The young man in the raincoat suddenly rode a green ox and stood in front of her. It's me. Sister, don't come over. I know you've always been with me. That's why I revealed my whereabouts to you. Don't disturb the other me in the future. She has a mission, an important mission that concerns everything. It's more important than my own existence. I hope you can let go. Our fate has long since been severed. Shen Yanqing stared at Hong Chen and said seriously. Ice lotuses fell from the sky and landed in front of her. Little Sovereign touched his chin and guessed, could it be that the two of you are related to each other in a past life? Zhou Xuanji and Mortal Sovereign couldn't help but be moved. Shen Yanqing turned to look at Little Supreme Sovereign and nodded, Supreme Sovereign really has good eyesight. She is indeed my previous incarnation. She was the primogenitor who opened up the origin of the myriad worlds. If her consciousness hadn't awakened, would have died in the passageway between the two worlds. In order to save me, she brought me to the origin of all worlds. I can only live here. Once I leave, my body and soul will be destroyed. Supreme Crimson Dust felt as if he had been struck by lightning and stood rooted to the spot. Zhou Xuanji was also shocked. That Shen Nianqing outside had such a background. Little Sovereign was moved and said, "Primogenitor? Then what is her mission?" Primogenitor, as the name suggested, was one of the earliest Supremes. "I can't say." Shen Nianqing shook her head, then looked at Sovereign Hong Chen and said, "In addition to clarifying the misunderstanding, I will also give you an opportunity. In the future, you will live for yourself." With that, she raised her right hand. There was a loud bang. An ice coffin rose from her side. It was 5 feet high. The coffin lid was transparent. Zhou Xuanji and the other two could see an ice crystal staff lying inside. The top of the staff was like a crown, exquisite and noble. An ice dragon lingered around the body of the staff. It seemed to be made of ice chi. It was twisting slightly and looked lifelike. This is the artifact of the Ice Demon Emperor, the Ice Emperor Magic Staff. If you get it, you can get the inheritance of the Ice Demon Emperor, Shen Nianqing introduced as the coffin lid opened. Shen Nianqing introduced, and the lid of the coffin opened. Looking at the Ice Emperor Magic Staff, Sovereign Hong Chen fell into a trance. It was as if she was possessed. She stepped forward, wanting to get the Ice Emperor Magic Staff. At this time, Zhou Xuanji was 1 step ahead of her. He grabbed the Ice Emperor Magic Staff. Boom! A violent ice power erupted, instantly freezing Sovereign Hong Chen, Shen Nianqing, Little Sovereign, the young man in the raincoat, and the green ox. Zhou Xuanji's body was also covered with ice chips. So this is the power of the Ice Demon Emperor. Zhou Xuanji murmured, staring at the Ice Emperor Magic Staff in his hand. He had obtained the power of the Ice Demon Emperor a long time ago. At that time, Gu Tianlin and Long Sheng were so scared that they turned around and ran. Zhou Xuanji's eyes turned cold as he absorbed all the ice power. Little Sovereign and the others were freed from the frozen state. The young man in the raincoat looked at him in horror, shivering. Shen Nianqing's expression changed. She asked in surprise, "How did you master the power of the Ice Demon Emperor?" Zhou Xuanji coldly snorted, "Do you want to kill your sister?" With Sovereign Hong Chen's cultivation, his soul would be frozen if he touched the Ice Emperor Magic Staff. This little girl has bad intentions. "Tsk tisk, it's the power I got on Ice Island last time," Little Sovereign said excitedly. His eyes fell on the Ice Emperor Magic Staff. His eyes were full of curiosity. "How strong is this Ice Emperor Magic Staff?" "I underestimated you. You will indeed freeze her, but I don't want to harm her. I just want to keep her here and accompany me forever," Shen Nianqing said with a faint look in her eyes. As her voice fell, she suddenly raised her arms. "All of you stay with me. Be with me for all eternity." Her husky voice sharpened. Rumble. The entire ice city shook violently. The frozen creatures broke out of the ice. Every creature's eyes were red and filled with killing intent. They jumped up one after another and gathered above Zhou Xuanji's group of 3. The young man in the raincoat suddenly took off his straw hat. His body expanded at a speed visible to the naked eye. He quickly turned into a minotaur. The red hair all over his body fluttered in the wind. He looked like an ox demon bathed in blood. The green ox under him roared, its eyes bloodshot. Killing intent gathered from all directions, causing Crimson Dust Supremacy to feel a little suffocated. Chapter 958. This little girl has really changed, Little Sovereign cursed in a low voice. Little Sovereign cursed in a low voice. He looked at Supreme Hong Chen and jokingly asked, "Your chance has come. Do you want to stay and accompany her forever?" Mortal Sovereign's face turned ugly. He didn't say a word. She wasn't stupid. The companionship Shen Nianqing was talking about was the ice sculptures in the city. She stared at Shen Nianqing. Looking at her sister's ferocious face, she felt very distressed. Zhou Xuanji raised the Ice Emperor magic wand high up, urging the cold power in his body. The Ice Emperor magic wand rotated at high speed above his palm. Endless icy power rushed out like waves, sweeping through the creatures controlled by Shen Nianqing. The cultivation of these creatures varied. There were great sovereigns, origin fusion divine lords, 9 vast heavens, Tao ancestors, and so on. Facing the cold power, most of the creatures were directly frozen. But many great sovereigns quickly dodged. They still retained their fighting consciousness. "Be careful," little sovereign warned. Just as his voice fell, the sound of ice breaking suddenly came from below. A big hand covered in white hair grabbed Zhou Xuanji's foot and pulled him down. Zhou Xuanji's eyes turned cold. He tensed his body, making the other party unable to pull him. His current physical strength was incomparable to most great sovereigns. He raised his right leg and directly pulled the man out of the ground. It was a burly man with a bare upper body. His face was scorched black, his hair was like withered grass, and his muscles were very exaggerated. One could feel his explosive power with the naked eye. Zhou Xuanji raised his left foot and kicked him in the chest, sending him flying. This kick caused the burly man to disappear into the vast horizon. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Zhou Xuanji raised his hand as countless light swords floated around him, circling him at high speed. Sword sect immortal ghost weep. The light swords chased after the creatures in all directions. The Taoran transformed by the young man in a woven rush over riding a green bull, forming a strong blood-colored wind in front of him. It rapidly expanded, crushing the flying snow in the sky. Zhou Xuanji waved the Ice Emperor magic wand and hit the blood-colored wind. There was a loud bang. The blood-colored wind was blasted apart. The strong wind scattered in all directions, smashing the pavilions in the city. Zhou Xuanji came up to the Minotaur with a single step, and the Holy Ghost cursed sword appeared out of nowhere, slashing the Minotaur's throat. Soul Kunlun's sword descended from the sky and pierced the green ox's head, absorbing its soul. As soon as they clashed, Zhou Xuanji dealt with the Minotaur and green bull. He landed in front of Shen Nianqing and said expressionlessly, "Do you really want to kill your sister?" He also felt guilty about Shen Nianqing. But he couldn't condone Shen Nianqing's misdeeds. "So what if I am? You want to kill me? Can you do it?" Shen Nianqing's face was as cold as frost. She slammed her palm on Zhou Xuanji's chest, and a bone-piercing chill penetrated into his body. However, Zhou Xuanji did not even frown and directly absorbed her cold energy. Shen Nianqing's face changed drastically, and she subconsciously retreated. Zhou Xuanji didn't continue to attack. Instead, he looked back at Mortal Sovereign and Little Sovereign and said, "Let's go, we should go to that mountain to take a look. Maybe there is a way to save her." The two of them immediately flew behind him and flew with him to the giant mountain in the distance. Shen Nianqing was stunned and in a trance. On the other side, Zhou Xuanji's speed was very fast. In almost the blink of an eye, he landed on the giant mountain with Little Sovereign and Mortal Sovereign. The snow-capped mountains here were endless, and they were vast and boundless. Little Sovereign said in a low voice, "Be careful, that girl seems to be very afraid of this mountain. I think there is something terrifying hidden here." Zhou Xuanji nodded. He raised the Ice Emperor magic wand in his hand to Mortal Sovereign and said, "After we go back, I will help you refine this treasure. I use swords. I don't like to use this thing." Mortal Sovereign nodded. She also understood that she couldn't control the Ice Emperor magic wand right now, so she didn't force it. But now, the Ice Emperor magic wand could exert its true power in Zhou Xuanji's hands. Zhou Xuanji stepped forward, holding the Holy Ghost cursed sword in his left hand. The Kunlun sword floated above his head. The wind and snow here were very strong and the direction of the wind was very strange. It seemed to be deliberately targeting Zhou Xuanji's trio. Wherever they went, the direction of the wind would change. Zhou Xuanji's divine sense was also blocked. He could only explore a radius of 100 feet at most. This distance didn't affect anything at all. With a move of his mind, hundreds of his out-of-soul doppelgangers flew in different directions. In less than 10 breaths, his out-of-soul doppelgangers had all exploded. He didn't even see anyone else. His out-of-soul doppelgangers exploded for no reason. It was very strange. There should be some powerful force guarding this place, Little Sovereign said with a solemn expression. Little Sovereign said with a dignified expression. He had once again spouted nonsense. Supreme Crimson Dust flicked his sleeve, and countless streams of crimson dust chi flew out in all directions. However, just like Zhou Xuanji, her red dust chi was quickly dispersed. Let's go straight, we will run into something, Zhou Xuanji said, staring ahead. Zhou Xuanji said, staring ahead. Mortal Sovereign and Little Sovereign nodded. The trio walked forward and quickly disappeared into the flying snow. They kept moving forward. Aimlessly. This journey lasted for 4 whole days. There was no distinction between day and night. No matter where they went, all they saw was a vast expanse of flying snow. Zhou Xuanji stopped, frowning. He looked at Mortal Sovereign and said, "Wait for me in the Supreme Palace." Having said this, he took Mortal Sovereign into the Kunlun Origin Court. Immediately afterward, he activated the sword fusion technique and war physique. "What do you want to do?" Little Sovereign asked in horror. Feeling Zhou Xuanji's aura, he trembled with fear. His soul was on the verge of collapsing. Zhou Xuanji took a deep breath and said, "Destroy this place." Boom! A silver light erupted from his body, sweeping across the snow-capped mountain. Delusion Sea of Swords. Countless swords emerged from the silver light, covering the entire mountain. It was an extremely spectacular sight. Zhou Xuanji's eyes turned cold as the Delusion Sea of Swords erupted. All the swords wreaked havoc on the surrounding hillsides. Boom! 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 The entire mountain exploded one after another, giving rise to avalanches. It was as if the end of the world was coming. Zhou Xuanji stepped forward in the air, looking left and right, scanning the surroundings. Little Sovereign was terrified. He cursed in a low voice, "Kid, you are getting more and more unscrupulous. How can you act so recklessly in such an unknown place?" Zhou Xuanji ignored him and continued to destroy the mountain. At the same time, in Ice City, Shen Yanqing stood on the altar, looking at the giant mountain in the distance. Looking at the surging snow, she furrowed her brow. "That thing is about to awaken," she murmured. A look of fear appeared on her face. Zhou Xuanji moved forward, destroying everything along the way. He could feel that there was a force stirring in the depths of the earth. Sure enough, someone is hiding here. Zhou Xuanji looked down. There was a hint of curiosity in his tone. What is hiding here? It must be stronger than the Ice Demon Emperor. Shen Yanqing's previous life had left her here. Perhaps it was because the power of that existence could maintain her soul. "I don't care about you anymore. Take care of yourself," Little Supreme Being shouted. He really couldn't bear the pressure here. After he finished speaking, he entered the Lesser Supreme Sword. Chapter 959. Boom! The gigantic mountain began to shake. A faint roar came from underground, and Zhou Xuanji could hear endless hatred from the roar. It seemed like this guy was going to attack him directly. Zhou Xuanji continued his attack and bombarded the gigantic mountain. The mountain shook, and snow danced in the air. A horrifying silhouette slowly rose from the cracked ground. It was a magma giant. Magma flowed through the cracks on its body, evaporating the snow into steam. His body was bloated, and he barely looked like a human. He swung his gigantic fist toward Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji raised his sword to block. Bomb! He was blasted away. This guy's strength, Zhou Xuanji was shocked. The magma giant's strength was beyond his expectation. He only stabilized himself after flying for a few hundred miles. He took a deep breath and channeled the power of frost into the Holy Ghost cursed sword. At the same time, he activated the power of the curse in the blade. When the two energies fused together, they became extremely destructive. He slashed with his sword. Ultimate Chaos Dao. Countless sword chi ravaged the magma giant from all directions and engulfed it instantly. Roar! The magma giant roared hoarsely, and its might shook the heavens and earth. Zhou Xuanji activated his war physique and channeled his supreme divine power into the Holy Ghost cursed sword. He was prepared to deal with the magma giant with one slash to avoid unnecessary trouble. He finished charging quickly. With a slash, a silver radiance shone brightly across the heavens and earth. A loud bang resounded. The magma giant howled in agony as its massive body exploded. Rocks flew in all directions, and magma splattered everywhere. A violent gale came from the center of the explosion. Zhou Xuanji could not dodge in time and was sucked in. His vision blurred, and next, he felt the world spinning around him. In less than 3 breaths' time, he landed on the ground. He opened his eyes, and all he saw was endless darkness. Even his exterminating divine eyes could not see his surroundings clearly. Where am I? Zhou Xuanji was confused. He spread out his divine sense, but it was blocked by a mysterious power within 15 meters. He could not see or sense anything. Such a situation was enough to make any great sovereign panic. Zhou Xuanji immediately summoned the Fated Pearl. The Fated Pearl rose from his head and shone brightly, illuminating the surroundings. In the next second, Zhou Xuanji was stunned. This was a graveyard. Tombstones were erected in front of the mounds, and they were separated by 2 to 3 feet. Looking at the flat wasteland, it was impossible to count how many graves there were. There were still bones near some graves. They were probably trespassers like Zhou Xuanji who had died here. Zhou Xuanji stepped forward. The Holy Ghost cursed sword and Soul Kunlun sword were in his hands, and the fated encounter pearl was above his head. At this moment, he did not feel any unease. Just what is hidden here? Zhou Xuanji mumbled to himself curiously. His gaze swept across the tombstones he encountered along the way. The words were all different, but he could understand them with just a glance. All of them were grand supreme beings. There were even primordial sovereigns. Every name would be labeled with their cultivation level, and there were quite a few 9-hall supreme paragons. Zhou Xuanji suddenly felt that primordial sovereign was not just a status but also a cultivation stage. Who built their graves? Zhou Xuanji thought to himself. At this moment, the sound of footsteps came from the front. He looked up and saw a candlelight in the darkness. He saw a hunchbacked figure walking over with an oil lamp in her hand. She was holding a walking stick in her other hand. She was wearing old black clothes, and her hair was coiled with a wooden hairpin. She looked to be in her 60s or 70s. She was a little fat, and her dead and numb eyes were staring straight at him. Who are you? Zhou Xuanji asked. The old woman replied, the guardian of the origin of the myriad worlds. You can call me a wisp of smoke. A wisp of smoke? What kind of name is this? Zhou Xuanji felt strange in his heart, but his expression didn't change. He asked, what is this place? What is your duty? Will you attack me? A wisp of smoke calmly replied, the graveyard of the origin of the myriad worlds, the graveyard of gods. My duty is to protect the graveyard of gods and erect tombstones for the newly buried. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow, narrowed his eyes, and asked, these dead guys were killed by you? He couldn't see through a wisp of smoke. He guessed that those grand sovereigns and primordial sovereigns couldn't have fallen to their deaths. No, they couldn't stand the endless loneliness and committed suicide. Of course, some killed each other, a wisp of smoke replied indifferently. Boom! Suddenly, an explosion of aura came from afar. Next, a powerful gust of wind swept over. Zhou Xuanji raised his sword to block instinctively, but a figure dashed toward him. Clang! It was a man in tattered white clothes. His hair was messy, and his eyes were bloodshot. His right index finger touched the Holy Ghost cursed sword, and a horrifying force pushed Zhou Xuanji backward. Such great power! It's even stronger than the giants outside. Zhou Xuanji frowned. He immediately activated his war physique, mobilizing all the energy in his body to block. His backward slide began to slow down. The man in white raised his left hand and jabbed at him. Zhou Xuanji also raised his other hand and blocked with his sword. Clang! The sword and finger collided. It was a contest of strength again. This guy's finger was as hard as a divine artifact. Zhou Xuanji immediately entered godly speed and dodged the man in white. He came to his back and slashed at him with both swords. A wisp of smoke opened her eyes wide and mumbled softly, "Godly Biyao state." No, not yet. She was suddenly very interested in Zhou Xuanji. Even the great sovereigns of the 5 courts could use godly Biyao state. It seemed that this guy was really something. Boom! 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 Zhou Xuanji and the man in white fought intensely. He moved about and used his divine abilities continuously, which caught the man in white off guard. The man in white was very frustrated. "Oh! I'm going to tear you into pieces." The man in white roared crazily like a ferocious beast. His body was shrouded in blood qi, and his messy black hair danced in the wind. 3 demon god silhouettes emerged from his shoulders and back to defend against the attacks from all directions. This time, Zhou Xuanji could no longer toy with him. But Zhou Xuanji did not panic. He activated the sword fusion technique, and his body radiated with silver radiance, making him look like a silver god of war. Boom! The delusional sword ocean exploded. Countless swords of light levitated above the tomb of gods. The swords of light rained down toward the man in white like a storm. The man in white opened his arms and roared. The 3 demon god silhouettes grew taller and opened their mouths. Countless blood-colored beams of light shot out from their mouths. The blood-colored beams of light clashed with the swords of light like fireworks, illuminating the dark tomb of gods. Zhou Xuanji raised his sword and activated heavenly sword descent. Majestic sovereign's divine power gathered on the blade. The sea of clouds billowed, and a gigantic sword of light appeared and slashed down like lightning. The man in white could not dodge in time and was struck directly. Zhou Xuanji swooped down and came up to the man in white. He stabbed his sword into the man's chest and absorbed his divine power crazily. "Turn it into my cultivation." Zhou Xuanji laughed coldly. His eyes were sharp. Chapter 960. The white-robed man wanted to resist, but the fated pearl shot a beam of white light at him. He could not move at all. A strand of smoke's eyes locked onto the fated pearl. "What treasure is that?" She furrowed her brows, her heart filled with confusion. Why does this kid have so many serendipity? She did not intervene but watched Zhou Xuanji absorb the white-robed man's cultivation. About half an hour later, Zhou Xuanji absorbed all of the white-robed man's divine power. The white-robed man knelt before him with his hands hanging by his side. The 3 demon gods behind him had long disappeared. His eyes were dull as he mumbled, "I want to kill you. I want to tear you apart. I want to go back." Zhou Xuanji walked past him and came before a strand of smoke again. "What's hidden here?" Zhou Xuanji asked. "The serendipity of the origin of 10,000 worlds. If you want it, you have to find it yourself. Remember, don't go to the graveyard," a strand of smoke replied calmly. Mentioning the graveyard, Zhou Xuanji realized that the previous battle did not destroy any graveyard. Even the ground looked like it had not been through a battle. Zhou Xuanji pondered for a while. Then, he created hundreds of thousands of greatly avatars and sent them to search in different directions. A strand of smoke found a large rock and sat down. She was as calm as a wooden stake and did not move at all. Zhou Xuanji took a step forward and said, "Can you tell me about the origin of 10,000 worlds? I'm the sovereign of Kunlun Origin Court. I want to know about the legends of my ancestors." Having heard him, a strand of smoke looked at him in astonishment and asked, "You are the sovereign of Kunlun Origin Court?" She waved her cane, and a ball of light flew out from Zhou Xuanji's forehead and entered her mouth. Zhou Xuanji was shocked. He raised his sword instinctively. Don't be nervous. I'm just looking at your memories. These memories are not related to your privacy. They are shallow memories and can be easily obtained, a strand of smoke said. After that, she closed her eyes and began to savor Zhou Xuanji's memories. Zhou Xuanji sighed in his heart. The boundless universe was vast, and there were truly all sorts of extraordinary things. That divine ability just now was really amazing. He could not even detect it, let alone resist it. A while later, a strand of smoke opened her eyes. She nodded at Zhou Xuanji with a smile and said, "You are indeed the sovereign of the Kunlun origin court. You are amazing. Your growth speed and contributions are not inferior to the primordial sovereigns. A rising star. I like you very much." Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes and asked with cupped fists, "May I ask if Senior was also the sovereign of the Kunlun origin court?" The origin of all worlds was created by the ancestors of the Kunlun origin court. The other party guarding this place was definitely related to the Kunlun origin court. Not really. I once had the goal of being a paragon, but unfortunately, I was still one step short. Before the ancient era, it was extremely difficult to become a paragon of the Kunlun origin court. However, with your talent, you can also become a paragon in the immemorial era. A wisp of smoke shook his head. She slowly got up and walked back in the direction she came from. "Follow me. Don't stray more than 5 steps away from me," she said without looking back. Zhou Xuanji felt quite confused, but he still followed her obediently. The fated fate pearl was still hovering above his head, protecting him. The entire journey was silent. After walking for a full 18 hours, he still hadn't reached the end. A wisp of smoke did not speak either, which made Zhou Xuanji a little wary. But he was very patient. If a wisp of smoke did not speak, he would not speak either. "We're almost there." Just when Zhou Xuanji was mumbling in his heart, a wisp of smoke spoke. Zhou Xuanji looked up and vaguely saw a gigantic shadow in the darkness ahead. What was that? Soon, he saw the gigantic shadow clearly. It was a stone statue that was thousands of meters tall. He could only see that it was humanoid, but he could not distinguish its true appearance. Behind the stone statue, there were 4 other stone statues that were thousands of meters tall. Their postures were different, but their bodies were similar. They are the Kunlun 5 permanent ones. They used to suppress the endless universe. Before they died, they returned to the origin of all worlds that they created. Their wills are immortal and protect this world. A wisp of smoke looked up at the stone statues in front of him and introduced them with a complicated expression. Zhou Xuanji was confused and asked, "Existences like them will also die of old age?" A wisp of smoke shook her head and said, "Theoretically, no. But they were too powerful. Because they were too powerful, they kept creating the endless universe and came into contact with some supreme power, which was why they were restricted by their lifespans. On one hand, they could muddle along in the endless universe forever. On the other hand, they could create great merit and explore the unknown, which resulted in the restriction of their lifespans. If it were you, what would you choose?" Zhou Xuanji did not reply immediately. He was not tired of living yet. Those ancestors must have been tired of living, which was why they disregarded everything. After all, the time that the sovereign of Kunlun origin court lived was measured in hundreds of millions of years, not to mention how long they had been wandering in the endless universe. Zhou Xuanji had not even reached 10,000 years, so he did not want to think about this problem for now. "Now, I will give you a chance to receive the inheritance. You can choose," a wisp of smoke said meaningfully. A wisp of smoke said meaningfully. She walked to the side and found a big rock to sit on. Zhou Xuanji could sense the strange energy contained in the 5 stone statues. "Can I let others receive the inheritance?" he asked. He did not need the inheritance. He had enough serendipity. "You can. But the inheritance cannot be forced. It's the inheritance that chooses the person, not the other way around," a wisp of smoke replied. A wisp of smoke replied. She placed her crutch flat on her lap and prepared to take a nap. Zhou Xuanji let out Mortal Sovereign. He told her about the inheritance. Mortal Sovereign hesitated for a moment but still walked forward. Zhou Xuanji did not dare to trust a wisp of smoke completely. But the serendipity was right in front of him, so he felt that he should give it a try. If a wisp of smoke wanted to harm him, she would not agree to let others receive the inheritance. Mortal Sovereign walked up to the stone statue and put her hand on the stone surface. Boom! She was bounced back. Fortunately, she quickly stabilized her body and was not in a sorry state. She looked back at Zhou Xuanji. There are 4 more. Continue, Zhou Xuanji encouraged. A wisp of smoke curled her lips into a contemptuous smile. It was as if she was laughing at Mortal Sovereign for overestimating herself. Mortal Sovereign nodded and walked toward the last stone statue. Next, she was bounced back by 2 stone statues. She suffered internal injuries. Blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. She continued to walk toward the 4th stone statue. Zhou Xuanji frowned slightly. Could it be that she really couldn't do it? A wisp of smoke shook her head with a mocking smile. Autark Crimson Dust walked over to the 4th stone statue and touched it. In the next second, the stone statue burst into a brilliant light. Stone chips began to fall from the head of the stone statue. The stone chips quickly spread downward, revealing a beautiful face that could topple a city. How can it be? A wisp of smoke jumped to her feet with a look of disbelief. Zhou Xuanji was pleasantly surprised. Mortal Sovereign looked up at the stone statue in front of her with a look of anticipation and anxiety. Soon, the stone surface of the stone statue slid off completely, revealing a goddess that was thousands of meters tall. She was wearing a noble and beautiful golden dress and a jade crown. Her skin was fair and smooth. In this dim tomb of gods, she was so dazzling. Chapter 961. That's the only female of the Kunlun Sex 5 permanents. Her cultivation is exceedingly high. Her strength is ranked at the top of the Kunlun Sex 5 permanents. I didn't expect that this mortal god could be recognized. Could it be that she had been baptized before? She turned around and looked at Zhou Xuanji with a doubtful tone. Zhou Xuanji smiled and asked, "Does ancestral voice count?" Hearing that, a wisp of smoke widened his eyes. She cried out in astonishment, "Zhu Yin! How could this be? In the boundless universe, only the ancestral Buddha knows the ancestral sound. Does he know how to recite the ancestral sound to you?" Zhou Xuanji shrugged and said, "Although it's unbelievable, it's indeed so." From the looks of it, the ancestral Buddha was an incredible figure. He was suddenly very curious about the relationship between Shen Nianqing's previous life and the ancestral Buddha. How could she let the ancestral Buddha preach the ancestral sound to her? Other than you, has anyone else heard of the ancestral voice? It must be someone from the Kunlun origin court. A wisp of smoke suddenly became excited and asked. Zhou Xuanji heard and immediately understood what she meant. He thought for a moment and called out Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Zongjian, Lin Changge, and Chen Bantian. These 4 were his most outstanding disciples, so he could give it a try. As for Zhou Tanhua and his other relatives, he had other arrangements for them. The 4 of them were stunned by the scene around them. Zhou Xuanji began to explain to them what had happened. At the same time, Kunlun Wuchang's noble woman raised her hand and pulled crimson dust into her palm. Then, she held her in front of her chest. Noble woman curled up and her huge body turned into a ball of light. Inheritance. Zhao Zongjian was so excited that his breathing quickened and his eyes lit up. Before, he had always been able to stay by Zhou Xuanji's side. Now, the difference in cultivation was too great, and he had almost forgotten what it felt like to kill enemies for Zhou Xuanji. "Go," Zhou Xuanji said with a smile. Even the calm Xiao Jinghong became nervous. Chen Bantian was the most excited, and he was the first to approach. He directly awakened the first stone statue. Next were Zhao Zongjian, Lin Changge, and Xiao Jinghong. All of them had successfully obtained the fortuitous opportunity. The 4 stone statues began to crack apart, revealing 4 dignified supreme beings. Every single one of them possessed impressive might, powerful beyond compare. Looking at Xiao Jingheng and the others being sucked into the orb of light, Zhou Xuanji asked, "Can I receive the inheritance after receiving the ancestral sound baptism?" A wisp of smoke nodded and said, "It must be someone who frequently receives the baptism of the ancestral sound." Zhou Xuanji heard him and had a bold idea. "How many more inheritances do you have?" Zhou Xuanji asked. A wisp of smoke's expression instantly became strange. She looked deeply at Zhou Xuanji and said, "Could it be that you have many subordinates who have been baptized by the ancestral sound?" Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "Senior, if you help me, you will be helping the Kunlun origin court as well as these ancestors. This is called will inheritance. Do you want to leave the fertile water to outsiders?" A wisp of smoke frowned, falling into deep thought. Zhou Xuanji did not rush him but turned to look at Xiao Jingheng and the others. 5 balls of light floated in the air. The Kunlun 5 permanents were nowhere to be seen. Powerful auras were surging within the balls of light. His eyes were filled with anticipation. He didn't know how strong Sovereign Crimson Dust and the others would become after receiving the inheritance. "All right, I promise you. However, I can only give you 1,000 inheritances, and they are all weaker than the Kunlun 5. In this graveyard of gods, there is no inheritance stronger than the Kunlun 5. A wisp of smoke said with gritted teeth, which made Zhou Xuanji pleasantly surprised. He didn't expect a wisp of smoke to agree, and even offered 1,000. He smiled and said, "Then I will start choosing." His first choice was naturally the first batch of disciples who followed him. Those disciples were also the ones who had listened to his ancestral voice for the longest time. Beixiao Wangjian, Huang Lianxin, the Little Black Snake, Chongming Demon Monarch, Meng Tianlang, and so on. Soon, he had picked out 1,000 people. Looking at these Emperor Sword Court disciples, a wisp of smoke took a deep breath and tried to calm herself down. If she didn't guess wrongly, Zhou Xuanji must have mastered the ancestral voice. What serendipity was this? After Zhou Xuanji explained to the disciples, everyone became excited. "Grand Teacher, please show mercy. Serendipity inheritance. I didn't expect us to have a share too. Where's young Lord Tanhua and young Lord Shaoxian? Why aren't they here? The graveyard of gods. How many sovereigns' corpses are buried here? I'm looking forward to it." Seeing how excited these disciples were, Zhou Xuanji felt gratified. "No matter how powerful you become in the future," he said with a solemn face, "remember your original intentions. Don't be arrogant, understand?" "Understood." The 1,000 Emperor Sword Court disciples replied in unison. A wisp of smoke nodded with satisfaction. Then, she got up and said, "You little guys, come with me." The disciples couldn't help but look at Zhou Xuanji when they heard this. "Go ahead, I will wait for you here," Zhou Xuanji said, nodding. If a wisp of smoke still wanted to kill him, she didn't need to target these disciples. If she couldn't hurt Zhou Xuanji's foundation, she would fight him to the death. There was no need. After the disciples disappeared into the darkness, Zhou Xuanji turned to look at Mortal Sovereign and the others. He could feel that Mortal Sovereign's aura had reached the level of a court great sovereign. The aura of Xiao Jingheng and the other 3 also skyrocketed like a hot knife through butter. At this rate, they can all become great sovereigns. Zhou Xuanji was overjoyed. Emperor Sword Court had taken off after this serendipity. This trip was worth it. More than worth it. Zhou Xuanji looked elsewhere. He was thinking about where the Faded Pearl's aura was. The graveyard of gods must have a treasure of the same origin as the Faded Pearl. But now, he couldn't act on his own. He had to wait for everyone to finish the inheritance before looking for it. He took out the Lesser Supreme Sword, sat on it, and waited patiently. Time went by bit. Mortal Sovereign, Xiao Jingheng, Zhao Zongjian, Chen Bantian, and Lin Chang's aura kept growing stronger. Mortal sovereign's aura had already reached the level of great sovereigns of the three courts. Xiao Jinghong and the other three began to break through to court great sovereign. One had to admit that the Kunlun 5 permanent sovereigns were really powerful. The inheritance alone could make one's cultivation advance by leaps and bounds. Zhou Xuanji didn't regret it at all. Although he was only a great sovereign of the 5 courts, his strength could compete with the great sovereigns of the 9 courts. What was there to regret? He didn't want to be disturbed by other people's Tao of cultivation. He wanted to walk his own great Tao. Time continued to pass. In the blink of an eye, more than 20 days passed. Mortal sovereign stepped out of the light. Her aura had changed dramatically. Her red dress was glowing with divine light, looking very dazzling. She walked up to Zhou Xuanji with a faint smile. Zhou Xuanji could see the excitement in her eyes. I'm now a great sovereign of the 3 courts. I reached this realm without absorbing the court realm. Mortal sovereign walked up to Zhou Xuanji and said excitedly. Zhou Xuanji rubbed her hair and said with a smile, with your aptitude, you should be this strong. Mortal sovereign nodded. Suddenly, she noticed Zhou Xuanji's action, and her face blushed. She didn't resist and let him stroke her hair. Chapter 962. Xiao Jinghong and the others waited for another 3 days after the Hongqian supremacy's inheritance ended. Their cultivations had all reached the level of first court paragons, and they had been reborn. Zhou Xuanji was very satisfied with their progress and smiled as he said, in the future, the Kunlun Origin Court and Emperor Sword Court will be under your protection. He didn't want these 4 people to be in charge of the myriad stars domain's court realms. He had to make the Kunlun Origin Court stronger and become the strongest court realm under him. If they wanted to be the strongest, the number of grand sovereigns was the most important. Xiao Jinghong clenched his fists and said excitedly, in the future, we will be able to share master's burden again. He was not surprised that he could not see through Zhou Xuanji even with the cultivation of a court great sovereign. From how they saw it, Zhou Xuanji would definitely continue to improve, and he would become stronger at an unimaginable speed. Zhao Zongjian unsheathed his sword and said with a high-spirited smile, it's time for Emperor Sword Court to establish itself in the boundless universe. He didn't care about the Kunlun Origin Court. He only cared about Emperor Sword Court. Lin Changge and Chen Bantian were equally excited. They had already begun to imagine the future. Zhou Xuanji looked at Mortal Sovereign and said, from now on, the true Su Court will be under your control, okay? Autarch Crimson Dust nodded. He had no objections. Her cultivation was bestowed upon her by him, and coupled with his affection, how could she refuse? She no longer thought about Shen Nianqing. Only by cultivating in peace could he save Shen Nianqing. Anyway, Shen Nianqing would not die here, she would just be lonely. Loneliness, for a cultivator like her, was nothing out of the ordinary. Zhou Xuanji put them into the various worlds while he continued to wait for the wisp of smoke. The trace of smoke took the Emperor Sword Court's disciples to who knows where, and Zhou Xuanji was unable to use his divine sense to track them. He was not in a hurry. After all, there were so many disciples who wanted to receive the inheritance, and it would definitely take a long time. Another month had passed. A wisp of smoke finally appeared with over 1,000 disciples. Zhou Xuanji scanned with his divine will and found that most of the disciples had reached Origin Fusion Divine Lord. He smiled in satisfaction. It seemed that a wisp of smoke did not lie to him. Patriarch. Ha ha ha, Patriarch, look at us. We've all become stronger. I am now an Origin Fusion Immortal Lord. Sigh, I'm still one step away from becoming an Origin Fusion God Lord. What a great opportunity. The disciples were very excited and quickly surrounded Zhou Xuanji. Each of them spoke incoherently to express their excitement. Zhou Xuanji smiled and looked at them silently. After a while, a wisp of smoke walked over, and the disciples made way for it. She looked at Zhou Xuanji and said, okay, I have given you the inheritance you wanted. It's time for you to leave. Zhou Xuanji waved his hand and sent the disciples back to the Emperor's Sword Divine Range. He took a step forward and asked with a smile, "So the greatest opportunity in the Graveyard of Gods is the inheritance of the Kunlun Five?" "Nonsense." A wisp of smoke rolled his eyes. She could tell what Zhou Xuanji was implying. This guy was too greedy. Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes and said, "Can you let me walk around alone? There might be some serendipity that you don't know about." A wisp of smoke laughed and said, "Then go ahead and search. I want to see what kind of great opportunity you can find." She was incomparably familiar with the Graveyard of Gods. How could she have a better opportunity than the Kunlun Five permanent inheritances? Zhou Xuanji nodded and turned to leave. A wisp of smoke followed behind him, waiting to see how he was going to find it. Of course, she was more worried than anything else. She was afraid that Zhou Xuanji would act recklessly and die here. She had already given him so many opportunities. She couldn't let him die here. She was still looking forward to how the Kunlun Origin Court would develop under Zhou Xuanji's leadership. Zhou Xuanji called out the Fated Pearl again. The Fated Pearl covered his head. It shone brightly and expelled the darkness. He silently recalled the aura he sensed on the star map and let the Fated Pearl lead him to find it. Soon, the Fated Pearl trembled and began to lead the way. Zhou Xuanji immediately caught up. A wisp of smoke saw the Fated Pearl and couldn't help but narrow her eyes. Could there really be a better opportunity? Impossible. How could she not know? She quickened her pace and caught up. The two of them followed the Fated Pearl across the land. After walking for 2 hours, the Fated Pearl finally stopped. There was a huge pit in front of them. It looked like a desolate pit formed after a river dried up. Zhou Xuanji scanned it with his divine will but couldn't sense anything. So, he walked to the bottom of the pit, staring at the Fated Pearl. He squatted down and grabbed a handful of soil. He found some fine red sand hidden in the soil. The Fated Pearl spun at high speed, sweeping up gusts of wind. Boom! The ground shook, and the red sand at the bottom of the pit flew up automatically. The red sand gathered together and quickly formed a pearl that grew larger and larger. It looked very similar to the Fated Pearl. A wisp of smoke opened his eyes wide in astonishment. There really was one. Within the giant pit, countless red sand flew up from the soil, forming a red whirlwind. It was quite a spectacular sight. Zhou Xuanji sensed the aura of the Fated Pearl from the red pearl. He was shocked in his heart. There really was a second Fated Pearl. The Fated Pearl was already so heaven-defying, and there was more than one. What was the origin of this thing? Soon, the second Fated Pearl was formed. It was as big as Zhou Xuanji's Fated Pearl. The two pearls circled around each other and reflected off each other. A wisp of smoke couldn't help but ask, "What kind of treasure is this?" Zhou Xuanji shook his head and said, "I'm not sure either. I got it by chance." Although he hid it, he really didn't know the true origin of the Fated Pearl. A wisp of smoke frowned. She looked at the two Fated Pearls and fell into deep thought. Zhou Xuanji was worried that she would become bedeviled and reminded her, "Don't keep staring at it. Back then, I almost became bedeviled. Fortunately, I came to my senses in time. This thing will draw your attention to it unintentionally, and you will neglect your surroundings." Having heard that, a wisp of smoke looked away and said meaningfully, "It seems that this treasure is both good and evil. Don't get caught up in it." A treasure that she couldn't see through might be a blessing or a curse for Zhou Xuanji, so she was a little worried. "Don't worry. It has already recognized me as its owner and saved me many times. It shouldn't harm me," Zhou Xuanji said with a smile. A wisp of smoke nodded and said, "You should go." Zhou Xuanji immediately stored the two Fated Pearls in his hand and asked, "How do I leave?" He tried to jump out of the burial of gods, but he couldn't do it. The space here was similar to the mysterious space he was in when he activated the godly bodiless mode for the first time. The space-time was extremely stable and indestructible. "Don't move," a wisp of smoke said softly. She raised her cane and waved it. Rings of light came out from the cane, creating a portal in spacetime. She stared at Zhou Xuanji and said, I hope that you can remember your original heart and lead the Kunlun Origin Court to become more powerful. Also, stay away from the origins of worlds. Some of the origins might be traps, and they might hate the Kunlun Origin Court. Don't go to your death. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 963. Zhou Xuanji remembered what a wisp of smoke had entrusted to him. No matter what, a wisp of smoke had helped him complete so many inheritances and was worthy of his respect. Go in. A wisp of smoke said with a smile. His staff had already created a spacetime hole. Zhou Xuanji nodded and stepped inside. When he disappeared, the smile on one wisp of smoke's face instantly disappeared. She took a deep breath and muttered, what kind of heights will this kid reach? She was looking forward to it, but also very worried. Zhou Xuanji's growth was too fast, and this kind of talent represented great danger. Zhou Xuanji returned to the snow-covered world. The mountain range below was no longer there, and what replaced it was a boundless land of snow. After returning here, Zhou Xuanji could already sense the universe outside. He didn't leave immediately. Instead, he flew towards the ice city. Before leaving, he wanted to see Shen Nianxing again. If he had been strong enough, Shen Nianxing would not have ended up like this. Back on the altar, Zhou Xuanji saw Shen Nianxing meditating and cultivating. The youth in the raincoat and the green ox had gone somewhere. The entire ice city seemed very lonely. You really didn't die? Shen Nianxing said without opening her eyes, and her tone was full of impatience. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, you have quite a grudge against me. I wanted to save you in the future, but it seems like you will not appreciate it. Hearing this, Shen Nianxing opened her eyes and said coldly, you don't have that ability. Zhou Xuanji was powerful, but he could not be as powerful as she was in her previous life. Even her previous life could not save her, let alone Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, you are right. But I will try my best to save you in the future. With that, he turned around and left. Goodbye. I wonder when we'll meet again. Before Zhou Xuanji could finish speaking, he had already disappeared. Shen Nianxing was stunned. She suddenly felt lost. She looked at the lonely city of ice and muttered to herself, actually, I also want to leave. I really want to. Karma. After returning to the boundless universe, Zhou Xuanji flew straight towards the star's domain. He stepped on the Kunlun Soul Sword and traveled through the spacetime tunnel while observing the two faded beads in his hand. His own faded pearl already had many colors and was very dazzling. The new faded fortune pearl was completely red, like a blood pearl. He wanted this faded pearl to recognize him as its master. But no matter how he called out, the red faded pearl remained indifferent. But he noticed one thing. The red Feng Fate Pearl seemed to have been subdued by his Feng Fate Pearl. When his Feng Fate Pearl moved away from it, the red Feng Fate Pearl would move closer to it. Even when he grabbed it, it would tremble non-stop. Interesting. Zhou Xuanji smiled. He suddenly looked forward to the Luck Pearl's ability. Was the red Fate Pearl as powerful as the rainbow Fate Pearl? Could there be other faded pearls in the boundless universe? Zhou Xuanji was looking forward to it. He now had another target. That was to collect the faded pearl. This was good as well. The path of cultivation was about having a goal. Otherwise, it would be easy to slack off. Nothing happened along the way. He successfully returned to the astral domain. His absence for a few months was nothing to the astral domain. In fact, no one even knew that he had gone out to search for opportunities. Jin Sheng and the others did not dare to disturb his cultivation too frequently. After returning to Stars Hall, Zhou Xuanji continued to study the destined encounter pearl. He called out Little Supreme Sovereign. Little Sovereign was stunned when he saw the red faded fate pearl. Is there really a second faded pearl? He was amazed. At the same time, he was very curious about what Zhou Xuanji had experienced. Zhou Xuanji didn't hide anything and told him everything in detail. Little Sovereign was shocked. He didn't expect that it was really the origin of the myriad worlds and the graveyard of gods. A wisp of smoke. I have never heard of it. Does every origin of the myriad worlds have a guardian? Little Sovereign speculated. A fanatical look appeared on his face. The will of the ancestors of Kunlun is still there. Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, that starry sky map should have been released by Shen Nianxing. I wonder if the other origins of the myriad worlds also have faded pearls. He had a bold guess. Every origin of the myriad worlds from the Kunlun origin court had a faded pearl. But on second thought, it was impossible. The faded pearl was something that even the supreme incipient god couldn't see through. How could there be so many? In his heart, the supreme incipient god was mysterious and powerful. He was on the same level as the Buddha ancestor. Little Sovereign suddenly said in a serious tone, you have too many opportunities. You have to digest them properly. Don't go out and run around, lest you become eager for quick success and instant benefits. Do you understand? Zhou Xuanji hadn't comprehended the God-free state yet. He couldn't even see through his own faded pearl. Now that he had another faded pearl, Little Sovereign was a little worried. Don't worry, I know what to do, Zhou Xuanji nodded. He was also preparing to spend some time in seclusion. It would be best if he could pass the 10,000-year period of the wish-fulfilling sword. The wish-fulfilling sword was the only sword whose grade hadn't been announced. He had been looking forward to making a wish once in 10,000 years. Next, Zhou Xuanji began his seclusion. He first refined his cultivation. He had placed a restriction on the Stars Hall. The ancestral voice couldn't leak. At the edge of the Stars domain, a young man in green was walking up the Star River stairs. He had delicate features but strangely, he didn't have a mouth. It was Wu Yan, who had been ordered to find Zhou Xuanji. Wu Yan looked around with a curious look on his face. Very soon, he was stopped by a great sovereign. Little brother, are you also in the Stars domain? Do you know the Sword Emperor? The great sovereign asked with a chuckle. He was handsome and elegant, like a peerless prodigal son of the universe. Wu Yan shook his head, indicating that he didn't know him. The great sovereign raised his brow and asked with a smile, you don't know how to speak? He noticed that Wu Yan didn't have a mouth. But speaking with such cultivation has nothing to do with a mouth? This kid is really playing dumb. Wu Yan nodded. His eyes were clear, looking innocent and ignorant. The great sovereign shook his head and said, in that case, follow me. I will take you in to meet the Sword Emperor, who has recently become famous in the north. And so, Wu Yan followed the great sovereign into the Stars domain. Recently, the Stars domain was holding an auction. The Stars domain and Zhou Xuanji's prestige attracted countless creatures to participate. The North Boundless was huge. The Stars domain was already famous. Zhou Xuanji's battle with Daozong Xian had also established a great reputation. The combination of the two naturally attracted many people. Of course, it had something to do with Cardinal Heaven. The Stars domain was one of the few domains that could resist the pressure of Cardinal Heaven. For many creatures, it was also a refuge. Zhou Xuanji released Mortal Sovereign, Sovereign Yiyu, Xiao Jinghong, and the others to let them experience the elegance of the auction. Now, he didn't need to show up in person. On this day, he moved Zhou Tanhua, Zhou Tianyuan, and Zhou Shaoxian into the hall to test their cultivation. Zhou Tanhua's aptitude was outstanding. Even without the opportunity of the Kunlun origin court, he had already begun to break through to the great sovereign of the court realm with the help of the ancestral voice. Zhou Shaoxian was a little weaker. Zhou Tianyuan was still young. Chapter 964. Father, are there any inheritances? Senior brother Xiao and the others have all become great sovereigns. You can't treat us badly. Zhou Shaoxian said coquettishly. Hard cultivation was really hard, especially when Zhou Tanhua was gradually pulling away from her. It was really uncomfortable. Zhou Tianhua shook his head and laughed. He had no desire for the inheritance. Zhou Tianyuan, sitting on the ground, was very honest. He didn't dare to interrupt. I am preaching Tao to you. Isn't this an inheritance? Although Jinghong and the others' inheritance is fast, it is more stable for the future. Do you understand? The inheritance of others will never be as firm as your own path. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and smiled. In fact, this was also his selfishness. He had too many expectations for his children. He didn't let them accept the inheritance of the graveyard of gods because he had too many expectations for his children. As for Xiao Jinghong and the others, such an inheritance was already a height that they couldn't reach. Zhou Tianhua nodded and said, "Father is right. Besides, senior brother Jinghong and the others need those inheritances more than us." Zhou Shaoxian curled her lips as she stared at her father. She seemed to be thinking of another trick. "Tianyuan, you should also go and take a look at this auction. Broaden your horizons. I have the highest expectations for you. I hope you can be stronger than your father." Zhou Xuanji looked at Zhou Tianyuan and said with a kind smile. Zhou Tianyuan and his son looked like him. If the three stood together, they might be recognized as biological brothers. Zhou Xuanji always wanted to pay attention to Zhou Tianyuan. Zhou Tianyuan nodded and said, "I will not let you down, grandfather." His eyes were firm and full of confidence. Ever since he recognized Zhou Xuanji, he was no longer sloppy. He was busy cultivating all day long. His posture was no worse than his father, Zhou Tianhua. Zhou Xuanji waved his right hand and sent Zhou Tianyuan away. He turned his gaze back to Zhou Tianhua and Zhou Shaoxian. He said meaningfully, "I will teach you a divine ability now. How much you can comprehend will depend on your luck." As soon as he said this, Zhou Tianhua and Zhou Shaoxian immediately became excited. Dragon Follower Domain, Daozong Xian was sitting in a dark palace. There were 2 rows of oil lamps in the palace, burning with dark blue flames. 2 blazing figures were standing in the palace. Their faces were indistinguishable. They were reporting the auction of the All-Stars domain. After listening to what they had to say, Daozong sighed emotionally. What a great sword emperor. He actually wants to go against the trend. On the surface, it looked like an auction, but in reality, it was an olive branch extended to the entire northern limitless, to make it bigger and stronger. The Longsong domain would not do such a thing, because that would attract spies from other domains. When the time came, the Longsong domain would not be able to withstand such a situation. So, Daozong Xian admired Zhou Xuanji's courage. But he also understood that the multi-star field was not necessary for Zhou Xuanji, which was why this guy dared to be so bold. "Domain Lord, are we really going to let the multi-star domain continue to grow? Perhaps after the cardinal heaven tribulation passes, they will surpass us. At that time, will the Sword Emperor be as benevolent as you?" A flaming figure said in a deep voice. His tone was filled with dissatisfaction toward Zhou Xuanji. Daozong Xian shook his head and said, "Let them enjoy the glory and attract the attention of the cardinal heaven experts. A tall tree catches the wind. The cardinal heaven experts would definitely know about the star domain's ostentatious display. Moreover, the cardinal heaven experts hated the Kunlun origin court the most, and the Sword Emperor could definitely attract their hatred. By the way, what's the news about Gujuagio? His son went missing in the North Boundless. Doesn't he want to cause trouble for the cardinal heaven experts?" Daozong Xian changed the topic. His eyes flickered when he mentioned Gujuagio. No one knew what he was thinking. The other flaming figure replied, "I'm not sure. Gujuagio has been keeping a low profile recently. I don't know why, but the South Boundless forces are approaching the North Boundless. Hunyuan Heaven seems to want to reinforce the cardinal heaven experts." "Impossible." Daozong Xian cut him off decisively. He said meaningfully, "The 3 heavens of the post-primeval supreme seem to be on par with each other and have been passed down for all eternity, but they are not of one mind. They want to kill each other more than anyone else, become existences like the primeval supremes, and create an era of their own. The two flaming figures felt that it made sense and nodded. Leave and continue to search for your target, Daozong Xian said as he waved his hand. Daozong Xian waved his hand. Immediately, the two figures disappeared from the hall. After that, Daozong Xian took out a bead. This bead was exactly the same as the red faded pearl. There was a faint black qi flowing within it. He stared at the red bead and mumbled, "Treasure, treasure, what are you trying to guide me to do?" During the auction conference, auctions of all levels were held in the 100 Courtyards realm in the All-Stars domain. Tens of billions of living beings joined or left every day, and none of them were mortal. Although Zhou Xuanji did not show himself, his status had been rising. Although he did not fully control the All-Stars domain, Jinsheng was very ruthless. He kept the order among his subordinates stable and earned a good reputation. This day, Jinsheng was reporting to Zhou Xuanji about the supreme crystals and resources he earned during this period of time. He was very excited. After all, most of the treasures in the auction were not from them. They were just like throwing a brick to attract jade, leading a huge auction opportunity. "Master, your strategy is too amazing. But I'm only worried about the enemies from other forces. If they sneak into the All-Stars domain, will they?" Jinsheng asked, suppressing his excitement. He had such an idea before, but he did not dare to implement it. Moreover, the All-Stars domain had a bad reputation. If not for Zhou Xuanji's battle with Daozong Xian to a draw and his identity as the Lord of Kunlun Origin Court, everyone would not be attracted here. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "That's for the best. As long as we can seize them, we will have a reason to attack other domains." Jinsheng was stunned. He was shocked by Zhou Xuanji's ambition. How long has it been since he took control of the All-Stars domain and now he is thinking about other domains? Should I say that he is greedy or domineering? We should also let go of the recruitment. This matter must be taken seriously. Now, many creatures are fleeing everywhere. We must seize this opportunity. If we do it well, we can surpass the dragon follower domain in one fell swoop. Do you understand? Zhou Xuanji tapped the armrest and said with a smile. Jinsheng nodded. Thinking of the grand plan described by Zhou Xuanji made his blood boil. After that, he turned around and left. Zhou Xuanji closed his eyes and was about to cultivate when a beautiful figure rushed in. It was Shen Nianqing. To be precise, it was Shen Nianqing's previous life. She walked up to Zhou Xuanji and said with her hands on her hips, "Smelly guy, I have something to trouble you with." Zhou Xuanji didn't open his eyes and asked directly, "Can I refuse?" Shen Nianqing glared at him and said, "No, I need your ancestral voice." "Don't ask, I helped you get the ancestral voice. As long as you help me, I will repay you." Zhou Xuanji opened one eye and asked with a faint smile, "How will you repay me?" "I will help you kill an enemy. Anyone is fine." "How about it?" Shen Nianqing snorted, looking as if he had taken advantage of her. Chapter 965. Shen Nianqing's proposal made Zhou Xuanji ponder for a while. Until now, he still didn't know how strong Shen Nianqing was. Although Shen Nianqing often helped him, her position was erratic. It would be good if he could get a promise from her. "Can you defeat Gujuejiao?" Zhou Xuanji asked with a smile. When Shen Nianqing heard this, she was immediately annoyed and shouted, "Are you playing with me? If you don't want to do it, then I won't do it. I'll leave now. I'm really helping an ungrateful person. I've always been helping you. It's like I'm asking for your help." Filled with righteous indignation, she flicked her sleeves and left. Zhou Xuanji was helpless and immediately called out, "I agree, why are you in such a hurry? Did I reject?" Shen Nianqing suddenly turned around and said with a strange smile, "Then come with me." She waved her right hand and used her divine energy to sweep Zhou Xuanji away. Zhou Xuanji did not resist. With his current abilities, he could resist, but since he had already agreed, he would obey. The two of them arrived at an independent and unfamiliar void. Shen Nianqing stopped. With a wave of her right hand, the surrounding void turned into a magnificent world, with blue sky and white clouds, green mountains and clear waters, boundless ocean and vast desert. Begin speaking the ancestral voice. Shen Nianqing looked at Zhou Xuanji expectantly. Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji nodded. He began to recite the ancestral voice. Shen Nianqing also sat cross-legged. Her hands kept waving, and bursts of red qi emerged, diffusing in all directions. Zhou Xuanji narrated the ancestral voice while observing her. He really wanted to know what she was going to do. He found that this red qi was not the mortal qi, but was of a higher level. He suddenly remembered the identity of Shen Nianqing. She was the real Shen Nianqing's previous life. Shen Nianqing was a mortal god, so what was her previous life? Zhou Xuanji remembered that little sovereign had said that mortal gods shouldn't have previous lives. They were all origin souls. Could it be that she was also a mortal god in her previous life, and her realm was far beyond that of a mortal god? At this thought, Zhou Xuanji fell into deep thought. Looks like you've already met her and are curious about my identity. Shen Nianqing's voice drifted over, interrupting Zhou Xuanji's thoughts. He looked up and saw Shen Nianqing squinting at him expressionlessly. At this moment, Shen Nianqing made him feel so strange. His eyes were cold and emotionless. Zhou Xuanji spoke the ancestral voice and replied, "Yes, are you also a mortal god or the origin of a mortal god?" Shen Nianqing shook her head and said, "You can't imagine my identity, and I can't tell you for the time being. Once you know, you will be doomed eternally." So scary? Zhou Xuanji understood that there was no point in asking further. This woman would not tell him anyway. He focused his attention on the dreamlike world around him. He discovered that the world was solidifying. Was she creating a world? Zhou Xuanji suddenly remembered something. When he first met Shen Nianqing, she couldn't even defeat some tyrannical great sovereigns. But now, every time he saw her, he felt that she was getting stronger. And it wasn't just a little bit stronger. It was a huge leap in strength. What was he going to do this time? It was definitely not as simple as just creating. The surface of Shen Nianqing's body suddenly glowed with red light. In the blink of an eye, Shen Nianqing directly turned into red smoke and dissipated, leaving no trace of aura. It was as if he had passed away in meditation. Zhou Xuanji was stunned. Just as he was about to shut up, Shen Nianqing's voice sounded again, "Don't stop." Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji could only continue. The world continued to evolve, becoming more and more real and heavy. It didn't take long for Zhou Xuanji to feel the birth of various rules. Interesting. Zhou Xuanji smiled and continued to observe. In the starry sky of the Stars domain, the Stars Hall was located at the top of the entire domain. Millions of divine generals were hovering below, waiting. These were the guards carefully selected by Jin Cheng. All of them were Origin Fusion divine lords. Some came from the Stars domain, and some came from other universes to seek shelter. Now, these star guards took pride in guarding the Stars Hall. Because of this identity, their status in the Stars domain was extremely high. The treatment they enjoyed was also better than before. On this day, a young man wanted to go to the Stars Hall but was stopped. It was Wu Yan. Wu Yan had been in the Stars domain for a long time. He had always wanted to see Zhou Xuanji but he didn't have the chance. This time, he came directly to the Stars Hall. "Stop. Unauthorized people are not allowed to offend the Stars Hall." A guard shouted. The other star guards also glanced at Wu Yan. Their aura gathered together, forming an extremely powerful pressure that shook the space. Wu Yan was expressionless and didn't answer. He flipped his right hand, and a golden flag appeared out of nowhere. He waved the golden flag, and a violent golden gale blew. Before the millions of star guards could react, they were swept away and disappeared into the depths of the universe. In the blink of an eye, no one stood in front of Wu Yan. He walked in the air toward the Stars Hall step by step. His eyes were calm as he gazed at the Stars Hall. How dare you! Jin Cheng's violent cry came. He appeared above Wu Yan's head and slashed down with his saber. Boom! A formless energy barrier exploded and blocked Jin Cheng's saber. Wu Yan frowned. He waved the golden flag again, and the golden gale came. Jin Cheng only swayed a little but was not swept away. Humph, you dare to trespass the Stars Hall with your cultivation. He slashed down, crushing Wu Yan's energy barrier and slashed toward his face. Wu Yan's eyes focused, and his aura changed drastically. In the vast world, Zhou Xuanji was still narrating the ancestral voice. He frowned suddenly and felt a little uneasy. He spread out his divine will to see the situation in the stars domain, but he was blocked by the space-time barrier of this world. This time he was astonished. He didn't expect this world to be so hard. He looked up, trying to find Shen Nianxing. But since Shen Nianxing disappeared, she hadn't shown up again. Do you want to go back? Shen Nianxing's voice came. Zhou Xuanji nodded. Okay, anyway, I'm almost done. You can go back first. Shen Nianxing's voice came again. Next, he was isolated by a powerful force. In the next second, he arrived in the space-time turbulence. He didn't stop and immediately used God's supreme speed to rush toward the stars domain. Soon, he returned to the stars domain. The stars domain was still prosperous. He scanned with his divine will and found that all the courts were safe and sound. He breathed a sigh of relief and flew toward the Stars Hall. He suddenly discovered that the million star guards had disappeared. What's going on? His figure flickered as he teleported into the Stars Hall. He narrowed his eyes, looked ahead, and asked in a deep voice, "Who are you?" He saw Wu Yan standing in front of his throne with the golden flag in his hand. Hearing his voice, Wu Yan turned around and looked at him faintly. Zhou Xuanji took out the Holy Ghost Curse sword and was ready to attack. Wu Yan just stared at him without saying a word. Seeing this, Zhou Xuanji walked toward him with his sword. Thump. Suddenly, Wu Yan half-knelt on the ground and placed his right hand on his chest, bowing to him. Chapter 966. What do you mean? Zhou Xuanji asked with a frown. He scanned speechless with his divine will and realized that he could not see through this brat. This meant that in terms of cultivation, Zhou Xuanji was stronger than him. Speechless cupped his fist and raised the golden flag, intending to give it to Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji hesitated for a while before waving his hand. The golden flag landed in his hand. In that instant, he saw that the million astral guards and Jincheng were all safe and sound. They were cursing and trying to escape. Zhou Xuanji frowned even more and asked with a deep voice, "Who are you? What's your purpose?" Speechless gestured with his hand, and Zhou Xuanji somehow understood what he was trying to say. He was saying, "I have no ill intentions. I just want to assist you. This flag is a greeting gift, and it's also to prove my power." Zhou Xuanji looked at the golden flag and realized that the owner recognition mark had been erased. It was now an ownerless item. He immediately forced his blood essence into the flag and made it recognize him as its owner. The entire process was quick. He let Jincheng out and placed the million astral guards outside the Star Palace. Jincheng was delighted to see Zhou Xuanji, but he was enraged when he saw Speechless. He was about to slash with his saber. Wait, he has no ill intentions. He's here to join me. He was only trying to prove his power. You are not injured, right? Zhou Xuanji cried out. Although he did not trust Speechless completely, he saw his sincerity. He could not allow the conflict to escalate. Having heard that, Jincheng was stunned. He stared at Speechless with a deep frown. Speechless bowed to him with a sincere expression, looking harmless. Jincheng still felt uncomfortable in his heart. He felt that this brat was up to something. How about this? Jincheng, bring him to settle down first. Let him be a general of the astral guards and lead 10,000 astral guards. If he performs well, he can lead more astral guards in the future, Zhou Xuanji instructed. Zhou Xuanji instructed. Although Jin Cheng was displeased, he did not dare to object. Speechless did not feel that he was mistreated. He bowed to Zhou Xuanji before leaving with Jin Cheng. Zhou Xuanji returned to his throne. He observed the golden flag and wanted to see how powerful it was. There were millions of restrictions within the golden flag, making it so that the creatures sealed within the flag could not escape. At the same time, it possessed great offensive power. With a light wave of his hand, the Hall of Stars trembled. He immediately summoned Little Supreme to see what kind of treasure it was. Isn't this the Golden River Kuan Wind Banner of the Four Directions? Little Sovereign exclaimed, his eyes widening. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow and asked, powerful? Nonsense. The four-sided profound flags are one of the most precious treasures in the boundless universe. When the four flags are gathered together, one can move unhindered through a region. Little Sovereign said in a powerful voice, his eyes blazing. He suddenly turned to look at Zhou Xuanji and said gloomily, where did you get this serendipity from? Didn't I tell you to stop? He was both surprised and worried for Zhou Xuanji. This kid can't stay idle. I did stop, but others came to me, Zhou Xuanji shrugged his shoulders and said helplessly. Little Sovereign was stunned. Then, Zhou Xuanji told him the whole story. After hearing this, Little Sovereign couldn't help but doubt his life. Serendipity really came to me. After coming back to his senses, he reminded, you have to keep a close eye on that kid. It's not necessarily a good thing for an unknown person to give you a gift. Zhou Xuanji didn't say anything about his origin and his powerful cultivation. It really made him feel uneasy. Well, he didn't harm the star's domain, so I can't deal with him directly. Let's observe him for a while. First, tell me about the magical effects of the Golden River Kuan Wind Banner. Zhou Xuanji nodded and then led the topic to the Golden River Kuan Wind Banner. Little Sovereign rolled his eyes and angrily said, how would I know? He had only heard of the four-sided profound flags and seen the scroll that recorded its shape. He had never seen it before, let alone used it. After saying this, he returned to the Lesser Supreme Sword. Zhou Xuanji was already stronger than him at his peak. He also believed that Zhou Xuanji could handle everything. So, he didn't bother to worry about it. My dreams are more interesting. Zhou Xuanji took the Golden River Kuan Wind Banner and began to study it seriously. In the blink of an eye, several years had passed. A piece of news suddenly spread in the northern realm and quickly reached the star's domain. Sovereign Heaven had come out of seclusion. His cultivation had recovered. He had gathered billions of believers to attack the star's domain. At the same time, he had sent 10 great sovereigns of the 9 halls to show his determination. As soon as the news came out, everyone in the star's domain was in a panic. The great sovereigns gathered together, wanting to meet Zhou Xuanji. After waiting for half a month, Zhou Xuanji finally let them enter the star's palace. Master, Sovereign Heaven wants to attack us. He has sent 10 great sovereigns of the 9 halls. What should we do? Xiao Jinghong took the lead and spoke first. This was what Jin Cheng and the others had discussed. They let him say it to avoid angering Zhou Xuanji. Although Zhou Xuanji appeared very kind, he had preached several times. Everyone was inexplicably in awe of him. Maybe it was the influence of the ancestral voice. Zhou Xuanji, resting his hands on his knees, smiled and said, what are you afraid of? I am not panicking. Even if the sky falls, I will hold it up. Pass down my order, the star's domain will do as it should. I will never let the star's domain suffer any harm. He was very domineering and full of confidence. His words infected all the great sovereigns. The great supremes looked at each other in dismay, not knowing what to say. Among the crowd, Speechless looked calm as he sized up Zhou Xuanji curiously. His gaze fell on the Golden River Kuan Wind controlling banner behind Zhou Xuanji, and he nodded slightly. Zhou Xuanji noticed his little action and laughed in his heart. Was this kid acknowledging him? Zhou Xuanji waved his hand and said, "Okay, don't think too much. Go down and do what you need to do. I'm the sovereign of the Kunlun Origin Court. Even if Cardinal Heaven wants to kill me the most, I have absolute confidence. What are you afraid of?" 10 supreme martial artists of the 9 courts did sound frightening. This lineup was definitely enough to deal with the multi-star domain. Cardinal Heaven experts and other enemies could not come personally. Everyone could only bow and leave. After the Star Hall quieted down, Zhou Xuanji continued to cultivate with his eyes closed. He looked calm, but he was actually panicking. He pinned his hopes on Shen Nianxing. It won't be long before Shen Nianxing comes back. At that time, she should be even stronger. Not long ago, Shen Nianxing sent him a voice transmission. According to the time she said, she would be back in 10 days at most. Her tone was very excited. It was probably not just a small breakthrough. Thinking of this, he tried to compose himself. After 10 days, Shen Nianxing came back as scheduled. She went straight to the Star Hall and said with a teasing smile, "Smelly brat, Cardinal Heaven experts are coming to deal with you. Are you afraid?" Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes and replied with a smile, "You are back, I am not afraid." From Shen Nianxing's tone, it was obvious that she didn't put the 10 supreme martial artists of the 9 courts in her eyes. Apart from them, you still have enemies who are ready to make a move. When I came back, I found that some space-time turbulence near the multi-star domain has been restricted. You must pay attention to this. Shen Nianxing stopped smiling and said seriously. Chapter 967. Really? Zhou Xuanji squinted his eyes in astonishment. He actually didn't notice that someone was tampering with the All-Stars domain. It seemed that he had been too arrogant and careless recently. He looked up at Shen Nianxing and said, "Don't go, I have to rely on you." Shen Nianxing curled her lips and snorted, "You still know how to rely on me. How arrogant you were when I begged you before." In response, Zhou Xuanji only smiled. If Shen Nianxing wanted to abandon him, she would not come back. This girl said one thing but meant another. "Don't worry. With me around, no one can shake the multitude star domain." Shen Nianxing waved her hand and smiled, looking invincible in the world. With that, she disappeared from the hall. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and laughed. At the same time, he was curious about how powerful she was. It seemed like the world he had created earlier was extraordinary. Could it be that this girl was creating a courtyard realm? Impossible. Court realms were not as simple as just being big. Even though Zhou Xuanji controlled so many court realms, he could not open up a single one. The formation of a court required too many laws and divine power. Zhou Xuanji thought about it but couldn't figure out what Shen Nianxing was doing. He could only continue cultivating. One day, he would understand all of this. After Jincheng represented Zhou Xuanji to pass down the order, the atmosphere of terror in the multi-star territory was suppressed, but everyone was still worried. That was the cardinal heaven of the post-ancient prime 3 heavens. Even if he were to personally make a move, who would be able to stop 10-9 Hall's great supremes? Not even Daoist Hidden Heart in the Dragon Consort domain could do it. When Daozong's heart learned of this, he immediately sealed off the Dragon Follower domain, like a turtle withdrawing its head. No matter what, Zhou Xuanji's confidence affected everyone, making them look forward to Zhou Xuanji. Time continued to pass. The dangerous atmosphere of war was approaching the astral territory. On this day, a deafening roar resounded throughout the myriad stars domain. "Sword Emperor! Come out and face your death. I'll slaughter you first. Slaughter the stars again." The domineering voice laughed wildly, echoing throughout the realm of the 100 courtyards. Countless living beings could hear it. The enemy was here. A vast and boundless terrifying aura enveloped the myriad stars domain, causing all living beings to feel suffocated. But the feeling of suffocation disappeared as quickly as it came. "A bunch of cowardly dogs dare to challenge me. Zhou Xuanji's voice came, filled with disdain. A ray of sword light flew out from the star's palace. It was Zhou Xuanji. Jin Sheng, Fiend Venerable Qiyu, Supreme Venerable Crimson Dust, Xiao Jinghong, and the other great Supreme Venerables flew out from the various halls. The million astral guardians came in formation, and their momentum was tremendous. Countless experts flew out from the various realms. Most of them had been homeless before, and now that they finally had a place to settle down, they were filled with hatred and wanted to stand up. In the depths of the starry sky, 10 figures exuding terrifying auras flew over with a boundless army of living beings. Supreme of the 9 halls. The ruler of the court realm was a peak existence even amongst grand supremes. 10 of them came at once. Zhou Xuanji's robes fluttered in the wind as he gripped his 2 swords. There were legendary swords floating above his head, and his sword emperor spirit exploded out, shaking the surrounding space. The grand sovereigns behind him were also brimming with killing intent. They weren't afraid of the Cardinal Heaven army and were instead filled with fighting spirit. They had to defend their homeland. If Zhou Xuanji lost, the multi-star territory would surely be destroyed, and they would become stray dogs again. You are the Sword Emperor. The great sovereign of the 9 halls, who was leading the Cardinal Heaven army, said. He had 3 heads and 6 arms. He was burly and looked like a divine tower. He was even bigger than the other great sovereigns of the 9 halls. Each of his 6 hands held a mirror. His crimson hair danced in the wind like flames. Cut the crap. If you want to fight, let's fight. Zhou Xuanji stepped out with an extremely tough attitude. He split into millions of greatly avatars, which turned into silver meteors and charged forward. It was a spectacular sight. You are courting death. The red-haired great sovereign roared furiously as he took the lead and charged at Zhou Xuanji. The other 9 great sovereigns of the 9 halls followed suit. The war broke out. Other than the 10 great sovereigns of the 9 halls, there were still many great sovereigns in the Cardinal Heaven army. Their number was no less than that of the multi-star territory. Clang! Zhou Xuanji and the red-haired great sovereign clashed first. Exterminating divine light burst out from Zhou Xuanji's eyes, but it was absorbed by one of the red-haired great sovereign's mirrors. Zhou Xuanji then used the delusion sword C. Silver light burst out and swept in all directions, engulfing the Cardinal Heaven army behind him. Countless sword shadows emerged from the silver light, slaughtering the surrounding creatures in a frenzy. The great sovereigns of the 9 halls resisted with their own sovereign divine power. But those ordinary creatures couldn't. In an instant, Zhou Xuanji killed millions of enemies with a single move. Peerlessly powerful. This scene greatly encouraged Jin Sheng and the others. You have successfully angered me. The red-haired great sovereign laughed furiously. He waved his 6 mirrors, shooting out beams of crimson light one after another. Zhou Xuanji nimbly dodged them. However, these crimson light beams didn't dissipate. Instead, they intertwined with each other and erupted with a horrifying suction force. Zhou Xuanji was caught off guard. He was sucked into the crimson light directly, unable to move. The red-haired great sovereign came up to him and waved his mirrors at him. At the same time, the 2 armies clashed. Boom! 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 Explosions came one after another, as though stars were exploding in the universe. It was extremely spectacular. Zhou Xuanji used godly supreme speed to break free. He came up to the red-haired great sovereign with the Holy Ghost curse sword in his hand and pierced into his back. The curse power gushed into his body like a broken dam, destroying his bones and muscles. The red-haired great sovereign was shocked. He had no idea how Zhou Xuanji came up behind him. Too fast. It was the first time he had encountered such speed. He immediately turned around and waved his mirrors, wanting to attack Zhou Xuanji. But the curse power exploded, hindering his movement. Zhou Xuanji's eyes lit up. He immediately used the destiny manifestation technique. Billowing black clouds suddenly gathered. The red-haired great sovereign looked up, and his expression changed drastically. Zhou Xuanji dodged suddenly, and a great sovereign of the 9 halls appeared. The divine weapon in his hand hovered above the red-haired great sovereign's head. So fast. The great sovereign of the 9 halls was equally shocked. He immediately unleashed his sovereign's divine power to form a protective shield to defend against Zhou Xuanji's sneak attack. The destiny manifestation technique was activated. A silhouette appeared on the black clouds and slammed his palm toward the red-haired great sovereign. The red-haired great sovereign's body trembled. He couldn't move and was about to kneel down. "What are you doing?" the great sovereign beside him asked in shock. The red-haired great sovereign's eyes were filled with fear. He couldn't answer his comrade. His attention was already attracted by the silhouette on the black clouds. Not only him. It was the same for many other creatures. That silhouette was majestic and domineering. He was emanating a mighty pressure that dominated the battlefield. "Sovereign. Heaven," Jin Cheng said with a trembling voice. Fear was written all over his face. Zhou Xuanji appeared. Looking at the sovereign heaven silhouette on the black clouds, he fell into deep thought. It seemed that the sovereign was really cruel. He even killed his subordinates. This is the destiny manifestation technique. It will manifest your destiny and death tribulations. Take a good look. Zhou Xuanji said loudly. His voice traveled into the ears of every creature. Chapter 968. Destiny Manifestation Technique. It could manifest one's own death tribulation. The creatures on the cardinal heaven side were all frightened. They all recognized the figure on the black cloud. It was a cardinal heaven. In other words, Crimson Hair Great Sovereign would die in the hands of a cardinal heaven. What about them? Crimson Hair Great Sovereign was their leader. Thinking of this, the nearly 10 billion creatures were all terrified. Cardinal Heaven was tyrannical and cruel. They had seen it with their own eyes. They didn't have the confidence to think that the Cardinal Heaven wouldn't kill them. Nonsense. Just kill. Slaughtering the star's domain, the Cardinal Heaven will definitely reward us. A 9 halls great sovereign furiously shouted. His whole body was wrapped in lightning. Holding billions of lightning bolts in his hands, he charged toward Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji smiled contemptuously. It seemed that these guys' hearts were already shaken. He immediately shouted, "How long are you going to watch? Come out and help me destroy them." Just as his voice fell, the great sovereign wrapped in lightning suddenly stopped. His expression froze. He was petrified at a speed visible to the naked eye. Whoosh! All the creatures were frightened, including the star's domain side. What happened? They saw a figure appear on top of the stone great sovereign's head out of thin air. It was Shen Yanqing. She slammed down with her palm, smashing him into pieces and turning him into ashes. Interesting. The corner of Shen Yanqing's mouth rose as her figure disappeared. When she reappeared, she was already behind another 9 halls great sovereign. It was the same palm, but this great sovereign was first petrified and then turned into ashes. He was directly killed. Shen Yanqing moved continuously, killing the 9 halls great sovereigns with one palm strike after another. Boom! The Cardinal Heaven army retreated in fear, staying away from the battlefield. Even the great sovereigns did the same. Who is that woman? Impossible. What did I see? Oh my God. Run. That's a 9 halls great sovereign. He died just like that. No wonder the Sword Emperor is so arrogant. He has someone behind him. The creatures were scared out of their wits. They didn't dare to fight anymore. The star's domain side was stunned. Some of them had seen Shen Yanqing and knew that she was a special existence. She could meet Zhou Xuanji directly. At first, they thought that Shen Yanqing was Zhou Xuanji's lover. Only now did they know that this woman was Zhou Xuanji's backer. No wonder she was so arrogant and domineering. She was really strong. Those creatures who almost offended Shen Yanqing all had cold sweat on their foreheads. Xiao Jingheng lamented, "How powerful. Master is always able to attract such experts to his side." Zhao Congjian, Lin Changge, and Chen Bantian nodded. Jin Sheng and the other authoritative figures of the myriad stars domain were all in shock. Speechless, he stared at Shen Yanqing and frowned. No one knew what he was thinking. In less than 10 breaths, except for the red-haired Great Supreme, all the 9 courts Great Supreme were killed. Shen Yanqing turned her attention to the other Great Supreme. A one-sided slaughter unfolded. Zhou Xuanji began to watch the show. He discovered that Shen Yanqing's speed wasn't any slower than his Shen Wu. Was it purely the speed of his physical body, or was it a divine ability? He was once again interested in Shen Yanqing. Cardinal Heaven subordinates, listen up. You have already lost. If you escape, you will definitely die. Join the stars domain and I will let bygones be bygones. If you fight for me, I will give you a safe place to live and let you be reborn. Zhou Xuanji suddenly spoke. His voice was loud and full of provocation. The creatures who were running stopped when they heard this. They all knew how the Cardinal Heaven treated their defeated subordinates. They were really going to kill them. For a moment, nearly half of the creatures stopped running. In this situation, they didn't dare to have any other ambitions. They just wanted to live. A great sovereign turned around in horror and cried, "I am willing to surrender. Don't kill me." Shen Yanqing was too fast. He understood that he couldn't escape. If the great sovereign surrenders, don't kill them. Keep them alive. As long as they kneel down, it means that they have surrendered. Don't kill them. Zhou Xuanji shouted, hoping that Shen Yanqing would give him face. Shen Yanqing didn't disappoint him. She directly skipped over all the great sovereigns who knelt down. In this way, more and more great sovereigns chose to surrender. The war was over. Looking at the creatures kneeling in front of them, the people of the myriad stars domain all felt their blood boiling. The Sword Emperor is invincible. Ha ha ha, he didn't lie to us. This battle is too easy. Our stars domain is going to rise. If we absorb them, our strength will soar. I think we can also swallow the dragon consort domain. The cry of victory soon spread to the stars domain. In a short while, there were only kneeling creatures left in this universe. Shen Yanqing smiled and no longer chased them. Instead, she flew back to the stars domain to rest. No one dared to block her flight. Zhou Xuanji, carrying the muddle-headed great sovereign, disappeared. He didn't need to deal with the rest of the situation himself. All the great sovereigns who could threaten Jin Sheng were dead. None of the remaining great sovereigns were stronger than him. After returning to the Stars Palace, Zhou Xuanji began to absorb the divine energy of the red-haired great sovereign. This guy was a great sovereign of the 9 courts. Zhou Xuanji might be able to break through to the great sovereign of the 6 courts in one fell swoop. The red-haired great sovereign was still in a state of fear. It wasn't that the fate manifestation technique was too strong but that the Cardinal Heaven made him too afraid. After 3 days, Jin Xing arranged for the defeated ones to be scattered to various courts, completely breaking them up. Zhou Xuanji kept his promise and didn't humiliate them. This made them breathe a sigh of relief and rejoice. In fact, after joining the Cardinal Heaven, they regretted it. They followed the Cardinal Heaven and fought non-stop every day. They had no time to rest. Once they were defeated, they would die. The Cardinal Heaven hated traitors so much that they would send a large number of subordinates to hunt them down. So they didn't dare to escape. Today, they were defeated. They had no choice but to betray the Cardinal Heaven. Zhou Xuanji transmitted his voice to Jin Sheng to arrange the use of these creatures. Jin Sheng didn't meet him but he knew about his plan. Jin Sheng was very excited about this. He could feel that Zhou Xuanji really trusted him and even put him in an important position. His position hadn't been replaced by Zhou Xuanji's original subordinates. This battle spread throughout the northern Endless Realm. The Sword Emperor's name shook the northern endless realm again. All the nearby domains sent people to the Stars domain to curry favor with him. The lords of various forces in the northern endless realm knew how powerful the Stars domain was. In the northern endless realm, there weren't many forces that could defeat a cardinal heaven army like this. After Longsong domain learned about this, his heart skipped a beat. They had also defeated a cardinal heaven army before, but that lineup couldn't be compared to this battle. Daozong Xian even came to visit Zhou Xuanji in person. Inside the Stars Palace, Daozong Xian looked at Zhou Xuanji with fear in his eyes. He saw the red-haired great sovereign lying at Zhou Xuanji's feet. His sovereign's divine power was being absorbed by Zhou Xuanji continuously. Such an ending. Daozong Xian took a deep breath and said with a smile, "Sword Emperor, we haven't seen each other for such a short time. I didn't expect you to be so powerful." Chapter 969. Stepping on the red-haired great sovereign, Zhou Xuanji said with a smile, "Dao brother, we are really embarrassing ourselves. We are still inferior to your dragon follower domain. Can't beat him?" Daozong almost cursed inwardly. The dragon follower domain could not stop 10-9 Hall's great paragons. But he still smiled and shook his head. "You're too modest. What do you plan to do next?" Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "Do what you should do. Our pace will be the same as before. Of course, if the cardinal heaven still wants to target us, the war will continue." Daozong Xian had always turned a blind eye to the development of the multi-star realm, because he thought that it was seeking death. However, the appearance of Shen Yanqing made him feel a sense of crisis. With such a powerful backer, what would Zhou Xuanji do next? It must be to swallow up the dragon follower domain. After all, he had done this before. Although Daozong Xian was on good terms with him, it was only on the surface. The two of them did not have a deeper relationship. This time, Daozong Xian came to test Zhou Xuanji's stance. He took a deep breath and forced a smile. "Is that so? If there's anything you need help with, Sword Emperor, you can tell me anytime." Zhou Xuanji leaned forward and said meaningfully, "Since this is the case, then I will accept it. I have something that I need your help with. Here it comes." Daozong's heart skipped a beat, but he nodded with a smile. "It's said that there's a cardinal heaven army's base nearby. Your dragon consort domain can go and destroy them. Of course, if you can't defeat them, you can retreat. The main goal is to probe their strength. It's best if you can destroy them," Zhou Xuanji said with a smile. He spoke very kindly, without any intention of threatening her. Daozong wanted to refuse, but he was afraid that Zhou Xuanji would fly into a rage out of humiliation. If Zhou Xuanji asked that mysterious woman for help, wouldn't he be dead for sure? He took a deep breath, cupped his fists, and said, "Don't worry, I will personally lead the army." Zhou Xuanji smiled satisfactorily and asked, "Do you want to stay as a guest?" The corner of Daozong Xian's mouth twitched, and he said, "There's no need for that. I'm here to congratulate you, and it's time for me to leave. Continue with your cultivation." With that, he immediately bowed and turned to leave. He moved very quickly, fearing that Zhou Xuanji would change his mind and force him to stay. Zhou Xuanji smiled. Seeing how fearful Daozong Xian was, he felt wonderful. However, all of this was thanks to Shen Yanqing. It was not reliable enough. He still had to work hard to cultivate and rely on his own strength. After thinking about it, he closed his eyes and continued to absorb the supreme god force of the red-haired great sovereign. 1 month later, Zhou Xuanji absorbed all of Crimson Hair Great Sovereign's divine power and broke through to the 6th Court Great Sovereign. Scarlet-haired Great Supreme Being was also destroyed in body and soul, no longer existing. The breakthrough in Zhou Xuanji's cultivation caused the 2 faded fate pearls to resonate. They flew out of Zhou Xuanji's body and intertwined above his head. "This is..." Zhou Xuanji looked over with narrowed eyes. Colorful lights were flashing in the Stars Palace, looking extremely resplendent. Two extremely powerful forces were produced from the fated fate pearl. They collided with each other and fused together. Soon, they shot out two beams of light and entered Zhou Xuanji's body. These were two strange energies. They were very similar, but there were also differences. His fated fate pearl was milder, but the power of the red fated fate pearl was more sinister, causing him to shiver all over. He did not resist and used the invading immortal body to absorb the two energies. Somehow, he seemed to have sensed something. He took out a pitch-black long sword. This sword was called the coercive sword. It required the cultivation of the 6 court great sovereigns to use. It had never appeared before. The coercive sword's form was domineering. It was like a blade emerging from a black claw's palm, constantly releasing black chi like raging flames. The black chi dissipated as soon as it left the blade. With the coercive sword in hand, Zhou Xuanji began practicing. The sword technique he was practicing was not organized, but because of his solid foundation in the sword's Tao, it looked like a profound sword technique. Enlightenment. Under the power of the two fated fate pearls, Zhou Xuanji began to comprehend the sword technique. It was a wonderful and comfortable feeling. Zhou Xuanji did not resist but recalled all his sword techniques. The star's palace trembled as the sword wind blew. The million astral guards outside also sensed a tremendous power. They subconsciously looked up and saw the astral hall trembling. All of them revealed expressions of awe and reverence. The Sword Emperor was breaking through again. Too powerful. I heard that the Sword Emperor is not even 10,000 years old. Really? I heard it from the creatures of the Kunlun Origin Court. The Kunlun Origin Court is indeed the origin of all things. They can even produce such a peerless genius. Ha ha ha, this is a blessing for us. If we follow him, maybe one day, we will all be able to leave our names in history. The Star Guards were discussing. After the previous war, they all had fanatical worship for Zhou Xuanji. Even if it was Shen Nianxing who turned the tide, Zhou Xuanji could attract Shen Nianxing. It was also a kind of strength. The strong would never associate with the weak. The news about the Sword Emperor's breakthrough began to spread wildly in the star's domain. Everyone was in awe. Such an expert could continue to break through. What reason did they have not to work hard? Inside a small star, Shen Nianxing was cultivating under a peach tree when she suddenly looked up. Her eyes were locked on the star's palace as her pupils dilated. "What aura is that?" she murmured, furrowing her brows. She had long known that Zhou Xuanji had many secrets, but she couldn't see through them. She probed with her divine will, but a powerful force isolated her divine will outside the star's palace. This made her even more curious. But she didn't go there so as not to interfere with Zhou Xuanji's breakthrough. Her eyes flickered as she sighed softly. It seems that he is getting closer and closer to that goal. At the same time, inside the star's palace, Zhou Xuanji was focused on practicing his sword. He had gradually comprehended a new divine ability. It integrated all his sword Tao divine abilities, and the core was the divine rainbow Lord Tao. He wanted to create a sword Tao divine ability of his own. This divine ability was about to be completed. He suddenly put away his sword and sat down in front of his throne. He held the suppressive divine sword in his right hand and held it in front of him. The blade reflected his eyes. His eyes were so cold. "This divine ability will be called Sword Emperor Absolute," Zhou Xuanji murmured with a smile. The corner of Zhou Xuanji's mouth rose as he murmured. Although he had yet to unleash the full power of the Sword Emperor Absolute, he was confident that this would be his most powerful killer move. No one among great sovereigns could block this divine ability. He looked at the two fated fate pearls floating above his head. His eyes flickered as his heart was filled with curiosity. What was that power just now? It felt no worse than the ancestral voice. It should be said that it was another kind of ancestral voice that could lead him to create. The ancestral voice could only promote the cultivation of living beings. Both were infinitely mysterious. He raised his hand and took the two fated fate pearls into his hand before he began to observe them seriously. the two faded fate pearls had changed. A sword shadow was imprinted on their surface. The shape was very similar to the suppressive divine sword. Chapter 970. Zhou Xuanji held the two faded fate pearls and observed them for a long time. In the end, he was unable to fully comprehend the faded fate pearls. He put away the two faded fortune pearls, stood up, and walked out of Star Hall. He had already broken through to the 6 Hall's Grand Supremes and comprehended the Absolute Sword Emperor. Next, it was time for him to personally manage the Stars domain. After incorporating billions of Cardinal Heaven soldiers, the multi-star domain was in a state of expansion. Fortunately, there were enough court realms in the All-Stars domain, enough to break them up. Adding on Zhou Xuanji's prestige, not many surrendered people dared to act recklessly. Once they were discovered, Jin Cheng would execute them immediately. He used this method to tell the newcomers that fairness was not indulgence. Zhou Xuanji gathered the rulers of the various courts. They were in the starry sky below the Stars Palace. The majority of those who came were great supreme beings. They were very puzzled. Could it be that the Sword Emperor was going to hold a meeting here? Weren't they afraid that their plan would be leaked? Zhou Xuanji stood above everyone, and his legendary swords weaved together, forming a throne of swords. He sat on the throne and looked down at everyone. Jin Cheng was the first to kneel and pay his respects. The others also understood and knelt down. "Greetings, Sword Emperor," everyone said in unison. They couldn't help but feel excited in their hearts. Although they did not understand why Zhou Xuanji was doing this, at this moment, a wave of indescribable hot-bloodedness infected them. They seemed to see the rise of the multi-star domain, dominating the northern boundless continent, and Zhou Xuanji sitting on the supreme throne. At that time, their status would also rise. Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Zongjian, and the rest were kneeling among them. They were the most excited. Zhou Xuanji said, "I will talk about some of the arrangements for the multi-star domain." Everyone quieted down, anticipating what he would say. Cardinal Heaven experts are rampant and ruthless. They have already attacked us once and will definitely take revenge in the future. We can't just sit and wait for death. I hope that all living beings in the astral domains will work hard to cultivate and become stronger with the goal of protecting the astral domains. In addition, we have to expand and save those domains that are in fear. Zhou Xuanji spoke in a measured tone as he explained his plan. He wasn't afraid of being heard by all living beings. Instead, he intentionally let all living beings hear him. He governed with benevolence and chose to expand outwards in the name of benevolence. He was absolutely not afraid of being called a hypocrite. On the contrary, many creatures were pleasantly surprised. This was because many of their loved ones and close friends were still fleeing in the northern endless lands. If Zhou Xuanji could carry the banner of resisting the Cardinal Heaven in the northern boundless continent, it would be like taking advantage of the situation. Everyone would obey him. More and more creatures flew out of their respective worlds and looked up at Zhou Xuanji as he spoke. No one dared to interrupt, and they listened attentively to Zhou Xuanji's orders. If they wanted to expand, they had to stabilize their internal affairs. If the internal situation was chaotic, how could they pacify the external situation? After speaking for 2 hours, Zhou Xuanji finally finished. 100 years later, I will preach to all living beings. After saying this, Zhou Xuanji disappeared. From the beginning to the end, he didn't ask for the opinions of the Grand Supremes. Being autocratic might have many drawbacks, but it could unite people's hearts. Zhou Xuanji was willing to listen to their opinions, but that was in private. To the outside world, he had to show his strength. The stronger he was, the more confidence his subordinates would have in facing their enemies. As soon as he left, everyone started talking excitedly. "That's awesome. This is what we should do." The Sword Emperor is the first Almighty who dares to publicly announce that he wants to contend with a Cardinal Heaven expert. Northern Limitless needs us. Ha ha ha, following the Sword Emperor is so cool. Let's annex the Dragon Follower domain first. I've been unhappy with them for a long time. The Grand Supremes discussed among themselves. After a long while, they left one after another. The news quickly spread to all realms in the multi-star domain. Some nearby scouts from the god domains also panicked and fled back to pass on the news. Zhou Xuanji was not only declaring war on Cardinal Heaven but also the entire Northern Limitless. However, to those creatures that were fleeing in all directions, this would be a blessing. Every Limitless had a powerful barrier that was very difficult to cross. Those who stayed in the Northern Limitless could only wait to be slaughtered by Cardinal Heaven experts. In the turbulence of time and space, Zhou Xuanji moved forward with a suppressive legendary sword in his hand. He was looking for the restriction that Shen Nianqing had mentioned. He swung his sword forward, and his sword chi swept across. Golden talismans appeared out of thin air, densely covering the surroundings. Zhou Xuanji couldn't help but raise his brow. So many? He immediately destroyed these golden talismans and continued forward. Relying on his own divine energy, Zhou Xuanji forced all the restrictions to reveal themselves. These golden talismans didn't contain any destructive power. They could even be said to be very weak. But because of this, Zhou Xuanji felt strange. Who was it? It should be the evil emperor's subordinate. A clear voice came from behind him. Zhou Xuanji turned around and saw Wuyan standing behind him. Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes and said, "I thought you were mute." Wuyan didn't have a mouth, but he had delicate features and didn't look out of place at all. He replied, "It wasn't convenient for me to speak before. But now that you are being targeted by the evil emperor, I must stand out." Evil emperor. This name was like thunder to Zhou Xuanji's ears. The most powerful overlord in the Northern Limitless was the evil emperor. It was because of the evil emperor that the sovereign geniuses couldn't dominate the Northern Limitless. Zhou Xuanji asked, "Why is he targeting me? Am I not helping him share the pressure?" Wuyan stared into his eyes and replied, "The evil emperor's domineeringness and pride aren't any weaker than Cardinal Heaven. It could even be said that the four overlords are the same. They can't tolerate even a grain of sand in their eyes. You might already be a threat to him. He doesn't need help. He thinks that he can destroy a Cardinal Heaven by himself." Zhou Xuanji couldn't help but frown. He often heard of the evil emperor's name, but he wasn't clear about the evil emperor's strength. Some people said that he was comparable to the post-ancient sovereign Three Heavens, while others said that he was far inferior to a Cardinal Heaven. He couldn't even destroy a Cardinal Heaven who hadn't recovered to his peak. But there was also a saying that he had surpassed Cardinal Heaven and was just waiting for a Cardinal Heaven to recover to his peak. Only then would he have a pinnacle showdown, stepping on the corpse of the post-ancient sovereign Three Heavens to become the most powerful. No matter which one it was, the evil emperor wasn't someone Zhou Xuanji could deal with. Zhou Xuanji asked, "Then what do you think I should do?" Wuyan replied, "Get rid of these marks first. At the same time, send some people to guard it. Otherwise, once the evil emperor is free, he can directly kill us through these marks. He can destroy the star's domain with a single palm. Even Shen Nianqing can't resist it." Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji's eyelids twitched. The evil emperor is so powerful? He can destroy the star's domain with a single palm. This is too exaggerated. The divine ability you just comprehended is very amazing. If you study it carefully, you can step into the undying realm. In the future, you can even compete with the four undying overlords, Wuyan said meaningfully. Zhou Xuanji looked at him deeply. This kid can even see through the Sword Emperor? It seems that Wuyan has been observing him. What is your purpose? Zhou Xuanji asked, changing the topic. Chapter 971. Speechless replied, "I've said it before, I'm here to assist you." The Golden River Kuan wind-riding banner was a greeting gift. "You can trust me. If I'm plotting against you, there are many opportunities to destroy the multitude star territory." After saying this, he bowed to Zhou Xuanji again. Zhou Xuanji said meaningfully, "Then help me remove these marks." There was no end to the space-time turbulence. He had no idea how many golden seals the evil emperor's men had left behind. Speechless did not refuse. He raised his right hand, and countless beams of light flew out from his palm. Boom! 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 One by one, the invisible golden imprints were struck, and after appearing, they immediately dissipated. Zhou Xuanji could not help but think to himself, this fellow was so sensitive to these golden marks. Could it be that he was related to the evil emperor? When he thought of this, he became even more wary of Wordless. He flew ahead without saying a word, and Zhou Xuanji closely followed behind. 10 hours later, Wu Yan finally managed to remove all of the golden marks. They flew for a very long time. Zhou Xuanji felt quite shocked in his heart. With so many golden marks, how many people had the evil emperor sent? The scariest thing was that he hadn't noticed it before. It seemed that he couldn't just focus on cultivation in the future. He had to be more vigilant. He immediately created dozens of doppelgangers. The doppelgangers quickly flew in different directions and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Speechless squinted his eyes and said, "Your clone is not bad. In terms of stability, it's rare." Zhou Xuanji could not deny it. "Let's go, it's time to go back," he said, waving his hand. The two of them teleported back to the astral field. After returning to the Star Hall, Zhou Xuanji began to think about how to deal with the dual pressure from the evil emperor and Cardinal Heaven. Right now, the two overlords seemed to be competing with each other, but in reality, it was just a stalemate. Either side had the ability to free up a hand to destroy him. He took out the Lesser Supreme Sword and summoned Little Supreme Sword. Demonic Emperor. When Little Sovereign heard this, his eyelids twitched wildly and he fell into silence. Looking at his expression, it was clear that he was also filled with reverence for the Demonic Emperor. "By the way, what is the imperishable realm?" "I have a subordinate named Wu Yan who said that I have a chance to stand shoulder to shoulder with the evil emperor and step into the imperishable realm," Zhou Xuanji asked. Seeing his expression, Zhou Xuanji knew that he could not think of a solution, so it was better to ask something else. Little Sovereign's eyes widened as he asked in astonishment, "How can you step into the immortal realm? What did you get?" He had only been asleep for a short period of time, and this kid had made such a huge leap. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "I created a divine ability." As he finished speaking, he took out the divine sword of coercion. His eyes were instantly filled with purple light, and everything became silent. Little Sovereign was stunned and inexplicably creeped out. Even though Zhou Xuanji had not acted yet, he felt like he was going to die. The Hall of Stars fell into a strange atmosphere. Little Sovereign gulped and cautiously asked, "What is this magical power called?" "Absolute Sword Emperor," Zhou Xuanji said with a pleased smile. He had not truly used the Sword Emperor Absolute technique because if he did, it would definitely be a disaster. "Good name. It suits you very well," Little Sovereign exclaimed in admiration. The purple light in Zhou Xuanji's eyes faded, and the murderous atmosphere disappeared. He took a deep breath and said, "The imperishable realm is a realm that surpasses the Grand Supreme Realm. It's said that it's impossible to break through that realm with just cultivation. It requires great fortune or great divine ability to break through it with force. Above Grand Supreme." Zhou Xuanji thought about it. The evil emperor must be an existence that surpassed the Grand Sovereign. Otherwise, how could he compete with a Cardinal Heaven? However, he didn't know how the realms above the Grand Supreme were divided. Little Sovereign reminded him, "You better behave for the time being. Otherwise, your enemies will not just be Cardinal Heaven." Zhou Xuanji nodded. Some plans didn't need to be publicized. 100 years later, Zhou Xuanji began preaching for the Stars domain. Everyone had been looking forward to this preaching for a long time. Zhou Xuanji's preaching had already become famous in the North Infinity long ago. However, most of the powerful cultivators didn't take it seriously. Those ancient existences wouldn't even guess that he was preaching the ancestral voice. Not to mention the North Infinity, only the ancestral Buddha would preach in all directions. When Zhou Xuanji uttered the first note, everyone's soul trembled. All the realms turned silent. Everyone began to listen to Zhou Xuanji's preaching seriously. No matter how high one's cultivation was, they would quickly fall into a state of epiphany when they heard the ancestral voice. In a pavilion, Wordless stood in front of the window sill, looking at the starry sky in the distance. He mumbled, "Ancestral voice, how many great opportunities are you hiding?" A rare look of shock appeared in his eyes. Obviously, he didn't expect Zhou Xuanji to know the ancestral voice at all. Next, he meditated on the spot and began to enjoy the ancestral voice. He wouldn't refuse an opportunity that was delivered to his doorstep. This preaching lasted for a long time. Zhou Xuanji only ended the preaching after making sure that every creature had gained something. The Sword Emperor is merciful. All of the creatures of the court realm began to shout these words. They were extremely excited. After listening to this sermon, all of the problems they faced in their cultivation were easily solved. Most of the creatures even broke through as a result. It could be said that the entire world was celebrating. In their opinion, such a magical preaching must have consumed a lot of their cultivation. Therefore, they were very moved and worshipped Zhou Xuanji even more. Zhou Xuanji was about to rest in the hall when Shen Yanqing barged in. She arrived before Zhou Xuanji in one step and asked, "What's the origin of that kid without a mouth?" Her expression was serious. Her eyes were sharp and filled with hidden anger. "What's wrong with him?" Zhou Xuanji asked in confusion. Although Wordless was mysterious, he shouldn't be a match for Shen Yanqing. Shen Yanqing gritted her teeth and said, "He has the extreme Dao Qi. He is from the East Infinity royal family." East Infinity? Zhou Xuanji frowned. He had already offended the Northern Endless Evil Emperor and the Western Endless Ancient Geniuses, and now he had also offended the Eastern Endless Ancient Geniuses? Shen Yanqing sighed. "I didn't notice it before, but when you were preaching, he was cultivating and leaked the aura of the extreme path. The Eastern Infinity royal family are all monsters. You've been targeted by them. You're in big trouble." She blamed herself. It was normal that Zhou Xuanji did not recognize him, but she had experienced so much in the endless universe. Why did she not notice him earlier? "He said he's here to help me. He might not be an enemy, right?" Zhou Xuanji said hesitantly. Although he had been in the limelight recently, he had not yet reached the level of an overlord who could threaten the world. "Help you?" "That is to win you over. When you grow up, if you don't choose a side, the Eastern Endless Imperial family will definitely make a move against you." Shen Yanqing frowned. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "Since you said that you will grow up, then there is still some time, right? Don't panic." Shen Yanqing came in such a hurry that he was shocked. Hearing this, Shen Yanqing felt that it made sense. The reputation of the Eastern Infinity royal family was too great, which made her panic. She tried to calm down and said, "You are right, but we must keep an eye on that guy. His cultivation is not very strong, but the Eastern Infinity royal family behind him is a family that has been passed down since the ancient sovereign era. We must not provoke them." Zhou Xuanji was surprised and said, "According to what you said, isn't the Eastern Infinity the strongest endless?" Chapter 972. It can't be said to be the strongest. It can only be said that it has the deepest foundation, Shen Yanqing replied, shaking her head. Zhou Xuanji was even more surprised when he heard this. This Eastern Infinity isn't the strongest. Doesn't this mean that Northern Infinity is the weakest? Shen Yanqing said seriously, "It's difficult to tell who is strong and who is weak. It's impossible for the weak to survive for so long. Today's 4 Infinity is more powerful than all living beings imagine. The 4 overlords have the potential to compete for the post-ancient sovereign 3 heavens. It's just that the world is advocating their ancestors." This wasn't the first time Zhou Xuanji had heard such words. There were always some powerhouses who were promoting the current generation. Zhou Xuanji listened to it, but whether he believed it or not was another matter. Since he is already here, let's take things as they come. You stay in the stars domain and help me keep an eye on him, Zhou Xuanji said with a smile, staring at Shen Nianqing. Shen Nianqing rolled her eyes at him and said meaningfully, I'm not helping you for free. If you ask me like this, you will owe me more and more. Understand? Zhou Xuanji shrugged, smiling but didn't say anything. Shen Nianqing smiled and turned to leave. After she left the star's palace, Zhou Xuanji's smile froze. Cardinal Heaven, Evil Emperor, Eastern Infinity Royal Family, it's really a gathering of stars. Zhou Xuanji raised the corner of his mouth and murmured, You want to use me as a chess piece? If the chess piece is too big, it will crush me to death. He didn't feel any pressure. On the contrary, he felt that the current situation was very good. Wordless came to assist him. Didn't it mean that the Eastern Infinity Royal Family wanted to support him? Then, he would have one more bargaining chip when facing the Evil Emperor and Cardinal Heaven. He took out the 2 faded fate pearls and continued to comprehend. Undying Realm. What kind of realm is this? In the starry sky filled with black chi, countless meteorites were flying like sand in the wind. A row of mysterious existences in black robes stood in the air. There were a total of 17 figures. Their heads were wisps of smoke, making it impossible to distinguish their true faces. They were looking up in the same direction. There was a beam of light with thunder and lightning. There was a huge figure vaguely in the beam of light. It was like a world-destroying demon god. It was incomparably majestic and its terrifying aura filled the universe with pressure. The star's domain has an undying existence that surpasses Great Sovereign? A hoarse voice rang out, its tone cold. A black-robed man replied, Yes, that person is a mortal ancestor god. She has the aura of the graveyard of gods. All these years, there has been a mortal ancestor god hunting Grand Supremes. Maybe it's her. The black-robed man at the side added, Not only that, there is also the extreme Dao Qi in the multitude star domain, and the Eastern Infinity Royal Family is also within it. It's best if we don't interfere and let the Cardinal Heaven Masters deal with the multitude star domain, thereby angering the Eastern Infinity Royal Family. The others followed suit. That's right, we can use someone else to do our dirty work. The Eastern Endless Imperial Family has always disliked Cardinal Heaven experts. Hunyuan Heaven also wants to intervene in the boundless north. We are surrounded by enemies, and this is our chance. Speaking of which, it's strange. What kind of background does the Sword Emperor have? Is it because he's the Kunlun Origin Court's sovereign that he could attract the Eastern Endless Imperial Family? We also have a Kunlun Origin Court supremacy under us. Why don't we send him to persuade the Sword Emperor and rope him over to His Majesty's side? The black-robed men discussed among themselves. The silhouette in the beam of light listened quietly and did not speak. After they quietened down, the silhouette in the beam of light said, Send the Kunlun Origin Court supremacy. You will arrange everything. This emperor is very tired and needs to rest. In the future, do not disturb this emperor if there is no especially important information. Understand? A murderous aura emanated from the beam of light, causing the black-robed men to sway continuously. They immediately bowed and disappeared from where they were. Ever since Zhou Xuanji knew that Wu Yan came from the Eastern Infinity Royal Family, he had been talking to Wu Yan intentionally or unintentionally. He asked about how to govern the multitude star domain. Wu Yan was very smart and could always think of many strategies for him. Zhou Xuanji passed down the strategies that he thought were good and implemented them immediately. From beginning to end, he did not promote Wu Yan at all. Speechless did not have any complaints. He looked like a loyal and honest person. This day, Daozong Xian came to visit him. The two gathered in the multitude star palace. Looking at him, who was high above, Daozong Xian sighed and said, I lost. How many elites did you send? Zhou Xuanji asked with a smile. Just me alone, Daozong Xian said straightforwardly. He was the most powerful being in the Dragon Follower domain. His loss meant that the Dragon Follower domain lost. Tell me about it. Zhou Xuanji maintained his smile. He didn't find it strange. After all, it was a cardinal heaven base that attracted countless believers to worship it. Even though the cardinal heaven was domineering, there was still an endless stream of living beings. They thought that joining the cardinal heaven would grant them eternal life. If they could not win, they would join. Serve the cardinal heaven. No matter how brutal the cardinal heaven was, they would not kill until he was the only one left in northern infinity. Everyone knew that the cardinal heaven's true goal was to create a great era like the primeval sovereign era. Any greatness needed to be revered. Daozong Xian began to talk about the specific situation of the base. It was a gigantic island, one that was even bigger than the Great Thousand World. A cardinal heaven statue stood on the island, which contained a strand of the cardinal heaven's consciousness. Daozong Xian was defeated by that strand of consciousness. Fortunately, it was just a strand of consciousness, or else he would not have been able to escape. According to his observation, many void beasts and powerful cultivators were hiding on the island. There were restrictions outside the island, and only great sovereigns could enter. Even if one entered, one would not be able to escape without the cultivation of the 7 courts' great sovereigns. There were no rules on the island. In other words, the island was a training ground. Those who entered had to fight continuously if they wanted to survive. Those who knew this secret would be killed by the cardinal heaven's consciousness if they had any intention of betraying. If not for Daozong Xian's powerful cultivation, he would not have been able to escape. You stayed there for 100 years? Zhou Xuanji asked with a strange expression. Looking at Daozong Xian's expression, it was hard to imagine that he had been through all this. Zhou Xuanji thought that he would be back soon. Daozong Xian nodded and said, all in all, if that island was released, the Dragon Follower domain, Star's domain, and all the nearby domains would be flattened. He still felt a lingering fear when he mentioned this. Even the great sovereigns of the 9 courts were so scared. It showed how terrifying that island was. Zhou Xuanji asked in astonishment, if so, what is the cardinal heaven waiting for? Daozong Xian shook his head. He was also confused about this. Zhou Xuanji immediately sent a telepathic message to Wuyan. Soon, Wuyan came to the star's palace. After hearing about it, Wuyan said, it should be some kind of formation. As far as I know, there is more than one island like this. They are scattered across the endless worlds. Daozong Xian sized him up and was curious about who this brat was. Sword Emperor, this is your serendipity. Don't you know how to absorb the sovereign's divine power and have mastered a speed divine ability? You can go there, Wuyan said meaningfully. Chapter 973. Wuyan's suggestion caused Zhou Xuanji to narrow his eyes. It was not that he had not thought of this, but Wuyan's suggestion surprised him. This kid knew him very well. Daozong shook his head and said, no, that place is too dangerous. I suggest the Sword Emperor not go. He was not trying to persuade Zhou Xuanji sincerely. It was just that he and Zhou Xuanji were in the same boat. If anything happened to Zhou Xuanji, the Dragon Follower domain would not have a good ending either. He had already defied the will of Cardinal Heaven. Even if he surrendered, Cardinal Heaven would not let him off. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, Dao brother, you can go back first. Pay more attention to the spatial turbulence around you. Previously, I discovered that the evil emperor's people were secretly setting up restrictions. Demonic Emperor. Daozong Xian was startled. He immediately bowed and left. He was also afraid of being targeted by the evil emperor. After he left, he looked at Zhou Xuanji speechlessly and said, such a lowly person is not fit to be on your side. Just subdue him. Zhou Xuanji asked with a smile, subdue? Can you help me? This kid was really arrogant. The Dragon Pursuit domain was bigger than the Star's domain. All right. Speechless agreed immediately. Having heard this, Zhou Xuanji was quite surprised. Could this brat defeat the Supreme of the 9 Halls? Give Shen Yinqing to me, Wu Yan said seriously. Zhou Xuanji's smile froze. He felt that he had been played. The two of them stared at each other, and even the air seemed to freeze. Speechless seemed to feel that it was inappropriate. He said hesitantly, "If it's just me, I'll need time. I'll have to integrate into the draconic domain first before making a plan." "Go," Zhou Xuanji said with a smile without hesitation. He had already planned to head to a huge training island in the Cardinal Heaven. Before that, he would feel more at ease if he could send Wu Yan out. Nodding silently, Zhang Xian left. Zhou Xuanji summoned Shen Nianxing again. After Shen Nianxing came to the Stars Hall, she asked impatiently, "What's the matter?" Zhou Xuanji told her what had happened and that he was going to the massive training island. "After I leave, I'll leave the astral domain to you. Wait for my return." Zhou Xuanji stared at Shen Nianxing and said with a serious face. Shen Nianxing frowned and said, "Are you sure you want to go there? I know that place. Those who can survive there are all ruthless characters. Those islands are the backup of the Cardinal Heaven experts and are also a deterrent to the various domains." Zhou Xuanji asked with a smile, "What do you think are the chances of me becoming more powerful after I go in?" Shen Nianxing began to ponder. She thought back to what Zhou Xuanji had encountered before and felt that this was an opportunity for Zhou Xuanji. But what she was most annoyed about was that this suggestion came from Wordless. If he succeeded this time, would Zhou Xuanji be even more gullible in the future? That was what worried her the most. She did not have a good impression of the Eastern Endless royal family. "Don't worry, I know what to do," Zhou Xuanji said with a smile. He understood what Shen Nianxing was worried about. She wasn't afraid that he would die, but she was unhappy and speechless. No matter what, Zhou Xuanji had to go. Apart from becoming stronger, he also wanted to learn more about the training island. He felt that Cardinal Heaven definitely had other motives for establishing such an island. The more ostentatious a Cardinal Heaven expert was, the more he wanted to hide something. "All right, you're on your own. Come back early," Shen Nianxing said, shaking her head. "This kid is always so restless. His growth speed is already very exaggerated, but he always wants to continue to grow stronger quickly." "When are you leaving?" she asked. Zhou Xuanji got up and replied, "Now." Kunlun Origin Court, Zhensu Court Realm, and Zhan Lanting Realm were all in his soul. As long as the people he really cared about were following him, he wouldn't have any worries. In his opinion, leaving his family in the Stars domain was far safer than following him. After all, he had the spirit void state. No matter what danger he encountered, he could escape alive. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, Zhou Xuanji left the Stars domain. Sitting on the legendary sword throne, he shuttled through the space-time tunnel. Ever since he intertwined the legendary swords into a throne, he had liked this legendary sword throne very much. Before leaving, he had already obtained the memories from the spies. He could accurately find the location of the training island. He let the legendary sword throne fly on its own while he played with the two faded fate pearls. Ever since he created the Sword Emperor Absolute, he wanted to taste the mysterious power of the faded fate pearls. The Sword Emperor Absolute could be even more powerful. Zhou Xuanji dared to go to the training island because he wanted to test the power of the Sword Emperor Absolute. In the Stars domain, he couldn't use the Sword Emperor Absolute. 2 hours later, he jumped out of the space-time turbulence. The void in front of him was filled with turbid gas, and a boundless giant island that looked like a terrifying giant scorpion was entrenched there. It was obscured by the gray fog, and it was partly visible. Zhou Xuanji could already sense the powerful restrictive aura, which filled the void with pressure. Fortunately, he had trained his physique to the limit when he learned the spirit void state, so he was not afraid of this pressure. A layer of silver sword radiance emanated from his body. Next, he, who was sitting on the legendary sword throne, turned into a shooting star and broke through the restrictive barrier, charging into the training island. On the massive island, thunderclouds billowed. The mountains on the ground were undulating. This place was also shrouded in fog, covering the sky and the sun. It was extremely gloomy, as though demons were hiding in every corner. Zhou Xuanji stopped and sensed the murderous aura coming from all directions. He raised his brows slightly. It's purgatory indeed. He mumbled to himself, his eyes filled with anticipation. He spread out his divine sense, and soon, he sensed horrifying figures. Some were humanoid, some were as massive as mountains, and some were like demon gods walking aimlessly between the heavens and the earth. Zhou Xuanji continued flying. He had no destination and only wanted to look around first. Soon, he saw a man with messy hair walking on a hill. This man was half naked, and his muscles were like steel. His pants were torn, and he swayed as he walked, as though he was severely injured. Zhou Xuanji looked down at him and asked, "Are you still conscious?" The man stopped and said slowly, "I'm Du Shen. I'm Du Shen. I'm Du Shen." Zhou Xuanji shook his head. He was crazy indeed. After the thought, he continued to move forward. He wanted to find someone who was conscious to understand the situation here. But just when he flew over, Du Shen suddenly turned around and leaped toward him. He was extremely fast. Clang! Zhou Xuanji blocked Du Shen's fist with a backhand slash. Both of them were powerful, and the space around them twisted violently. It was on the verge of collapsing. Zhou Xuanji glanced over and saw that Du Shen's eyes were extremely ferocious. There was a face in this guy's pupils. It was not Zhou Xuanji's but someone else's. It was a horrifying and blurry face. Anyone who saw him would instinctively be afraid. But if one looked closely, one would not be able to see his face clearly. Du Shen laughed viciously and kicked at Zhou Xuanji, unleashing a torrential barrage of attacks. Zhou Xuanji held his sword with one hand and easily blocked all of his punches and kicks with his back to Du Shen. Chapter 974. Poison Centipede attacked ferociously, but he could not hurt Zhou Xuanji. This made him even more irritable. "I will tear you into pieces," he roared at the top of his lungs. His body suddenly expanded, and needle-like hairs grew out from the surface of his body. His hair grew even faster. His fingernails grew as long as 10 blades. Zhou Xuanji's eyes focused. He held the suppressive legendary sword in a reverse grip, and his eyes beamed with a violet radiance. Boom! A sword light exploded from his body like a circle that expanded and swept across the surroundings. Poison Centipede was swept by the sword light and shattered into pieces. The dense fog between the heavens and the earth was shredded, and mountains were crushed. Everything within a radius of 100 miles was turned into nothingness. Sword Emperor Extinction. He simply used this trump card divine ability to kill his enemy easily. He waved his left hand, and Poison Centipede's soul appeared in his hand. He stared into Poison Centipede's eyes and hypnotized him. The exterminating divine eyes worked wonders. He used illusions to make Poison Centipede lose himself. After that, Zhou Xuanji began searching through his memories. But after a long while, he found nothing. This guy's mind was like a blank piece of paper with nothing in it. Zhou Xuanji frowned and crushed Poison Centipede's soul. He continued ahead, wanting to find a rational creature so that he could quickly understand this massive training island. Ever since he entered the island, a murderous aura surrounded him. At first, he thought it was because there were too many living creatures, but now he sensed that something was wrong. Although this murderous aura was sometimes strong and sometimes weak, the essence of the murderous aura was the same. It came from the same person or thing. Zhou Xuanji felt that this murderous aura might be the key to this massive training island. It could make living creatures lose their minds and turn them into killing machines. He looked calm, but he was actually on high alert, just in case the murderous aura invaded his mind. After flying for a while, he encountered another person, and he raised his brows slightly. This person was Poison Centipede. This guy was staggering on the vast land, exactly the same as the previous scene. "I'm Poison Centipede," the same scene, the same murmur. Zhou Xuanji looked down at him and was sure that it was not an illusion. Could it be a twin? Or a clone? Zhou Xuanji thought as he brought poison centipede before him and absorbed his sovereign's divine energy. This fellow did indeed possess the divine power of a supreme being. After he finished absorbing the poison centipede, he destroyed it and continued on his journey. Not long after, he encountered another poison centipede, who was still walking on the ground in a daze. Zhou Xuanji, who was sitting on the throne, became extremely interested in this phenomenon. Every time he encountered a poison centipede, he would grab it and absorb its supreme god force. That was all. He encountered more and more poisonous centipedes, and his cultivation kept increasing. He was even more curious about the identity of poison toad. Could it be that poison centipede was a clone? Endless? That's fine too. It just so happened that he needed supreme god force. Half a year later, Zhou Xuanji absorbed another poison centipede. He had already absorbed over 10,000 poison centipedes. Apart from the poison centipede, he also encountered other creatures, some strong, some weak. In this place, the weakest was a Grand Supreme. He increasingly felt that poison centipede's status on this training island was very special. Because he had no other living beings that would repeat. During this period of time, all the living beings he encountered had no memories. They were all muddle-headed like walking corpses. Until one day, he found a dilapidated Taoist temple. Its roof was broken and overgrown with weeds. There was a strange sound of knocking on a wooden fish in the temple. Zhou Xuanji landed in front of the Taoist temple. He gently pushed open the wooden door and saw an old monk inside. Interesting. Why didn't an old monk build a temple? Old senior, how should I address you? He asked. The old monk did not open his eyes. Yuan Sheng, he replied while knocking on the wooden fish. Yuan Sheng? Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. There was no such person in the North Limitless, or at least, he had never heard of him. My name is Zhou Xuanji. I'm new here and have yet to encounter a cardinal heaven. I feel that this place is very chaotic. What's the reason? Zhou Xuanji continued to ask. His tone was relaxed, neither aggressive nor cowardly. He could not see through Yuan Sheng's cultivation. This guy was very powerful. Yuan Sheng even gave him a sense of unpredictability, like divine pinching star. A cardinal heaven is at work. You have already become a part of this ill-fated fate. You are very unfortunate. Give up struggling. You will soon be captured by the cardinal heaven's murderous desire and become a puppet, Yuan Sheng said calmly. Zhou Xuanji locked onto the words cardinal heaven's murderous desire. So, the murderous desire that pervaded the heavens and earth came from the cardinal heaven. Could it be that strand of will? He fell into deep thought. If he could control that strand of will, could he control this massive training island? Put away your thoughts. It's useless. Even if you escape, the cardinal heaven will hunt you down and never give up, Yuan Sheng continued. Then what is your identity? What are you doing? Zhou Xuanji asked. Yuan Sheng replied, my identity is not important. I'm waiting for death. So straightforward. Zhou Xuanji hesitated. Should he attack Yuan Sheng? It seemed that he would not be able to learn more from Yuan Sheng. He thought about it and chose to give up. This old guy was not simple. He would not touch him for now and check out the other situation first. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and left. Just when he stepped out of the Taoist temple, he heard footsteps behind him. He looked back and saw that Yuan Sheng had caught up with him. He was still knocking on the wooden fish. Yuan Sheng opened his eyes and said softly, Benefactor, I suddenly feel that we are fated. How about I accompany you? Zhou Xuanji asked with a smile, aren't you waiting for death? Let me wait for death too. Why are you following me? To seek death together? He was on guard. Could this old guy be plotting something? I thought so at first, but when you turned around just now, I had a different premonition, Yuan Sheng said with a smile. There's a calamity in the boundless universe. The old and the new are replacing each other. On the eve of glory, I came here to find a master, but I have already given up on my desire for him. Zhou Xuanji said with a smile that did not seem like a smile, not only have you given up, but you can't escape either, right? Yuanqing replied with a smile, yes. But if I can meet a new master who can bring me out, I shouldn't give up, right? Zhou Xuanji smiled. He turned into a stream of sword light and disappeared into the horizon. Yuanqing followed after him while knocking on the wooden fish. The two of them turned into two streams of rainbow light and shuttled between the heavens and the earth, piercing through layers of clouds and mist with unstoppable momentum. Zhou Xuanji smiled and disappeared into thin air with God's supreme speed. Yuanqing opened his eyes wide suddenly. His gaze was incredibly sharp. Apparently, he was stunned by Zhou Xuanji's God's supreme speed. Zhou Xuanji thought that he had already shaken off Yuanqing. He looked back and opened his eyes wide in shock. Yuanqing was chasing after him relentlessly. Benefactor, you are not bad, Yuanqing said with a smile. Because of his small eyes, he looked like a sly old fox. Zhou Xuanji gritted his teeth and entered God's supreme mode straightaway, disappearing before Yuanqing again. Yuanqing opened his eyes wide again. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.